4K on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, this is Petrie and I'm here with you for the next 3 hours. In fact, of course, at midnight we have the phone-in, full hour of just you and me talking. And this story sends shivers down my spine. As much as I absolutely love and adore my adult child, I don't know that I could live with him again. I just don't know. So, I mean, I would if I had to. Obviously, there's always a room for him at my place, but I don't think it would be particularly harmonious. Look, we've both set in our ways, aren't we? That's the thing with adult children. They've got their own life. They demand to be treated like adults. They're adults, and yet when they come home, they revert to being your child. So you're stuck with a big grown-up child who still wants you perhaps to do the washing for them or cook for them or at least do the shopping and make sure the fridge is always full. So I don't know how it would work. I don't think it would be particularly harmonious, but this is why I want to talk about this at midnight. Adult children are increasingly returning to the family nest, with nearly a quarter of parents reporting that their offspring have moved back home after moving out. So I want to know, are you the adult child that had to move back in with your parents for whatever reason? Look, we know rents are unbelievably eye-wateringly high. They're set to get higher. Getting a mortgage, buying your first property is pretty much out of the reach of anybody until they're in their late 30s right now. So, you know, have they come back? Did you go back because you wanted to save money? So you didn't pay your parents rent? I mean, that's the other thing. Do you charge them rent? I mean, and they'd be like, why are you charging me rent? I'm your child. Yeah, but you're 30 years old. You've got a job now. All of that, I want to know how that worked out if you were the child returning home to your parents, and if you were the parent that you had the child or children move back in with you. How did you navigate it? What did you do? And how did it go? And how long did it last? I have become so set in my ways. I love the way my life is. I love the way everything is. And I don't know, in fact, I'm pretty sure that it would be a massive adjustment for me if my boy were to move back home. As much as I said he would be, you know, if he needs to, absolutely. But I don't know if I'd be a very happy bunny. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000, and you can message me as well, put the word talk and your message to 87222. I mean, you may have moved home for different reasons. You may have moved home because you're worried about your elderly parents, but still there's that dynamic. How do you fix that dynamic? It was never an option for me to move back home, never. It was made incredibly clear to me when I had to leave the family home just before I was 17. There was no way back, which was tough, but you kind of just got on with it, didn't you? Anyway, that's what I want to talk to you about at midnight, so make sure that you give me a call. Before that, we have the newspapers for Thursday, and Phil Dave will be here to go through those with me. Andy Lound is here talking about the space world and what's going on with that. Caroline Faraday will be joining us live from LA to talk us through some of the legal news, a lot of legal stuff going on. A lot of lawyery stuff going on in the States at the moment. But first, the Coalition on Secure Technology hosted an event in Parliament discussing risks linked to Chinese technology used in UK infrastructure. Sir Richard Dearlove, former head of MI6, warned MPs that microchips made in China pose a serious threat where the Far East country could switch off traffic lights and bring our capital to a halt in a heartbeat, as the technology can be accessed by the manufacturer at any time. He pointed out that these companies have obligation to the Chinese Communist Party and have to adhere to the country's national security mandates. He also added that Chinese manufactured electric vehicles are essentially computers on wheels that could be remotely reprogrammed at any time, and the CCP wants to make China the world's leading superpower by the middle of the century. It is intent on using non-military means to do so, making science and technology the battlefield. And if that is the case, they are completely so far ahead of the rest of the world. They're even infiltrating into the Middle East as well, because they're offering to pay up front. They're using technology like facial recognition technology, keyless locks and things like that depend on data. So they are already way ahead of the rest of the world. But you may be surprised to learn how much they are involved in British infrastructure. Let me just go through a few things. The General Nuclear Power Group originally had a 33.5% stake. China, that sort of stake, that's declined now. The same Chinese company has a 66.5% stake in the proposed Bradwell B nuclear site in Essex. Chinese companies have significant investments in the battery sector. The car companies, of course, the Coventry headquarters of the London EV company, which manufactures electric black taxi cabs, that's Chinese owned. We've got renewables companies, 25% there, electricity companies, water companies. All of these vital pieces of infrastructure have got massive Chinese spending involved. Now, would they ever want to switch things off? Probably not, because their economy would tank, because nobody else would trust them. But they do have the capability. And all of these things that are taking your data or reading your face going directly to China. So let's talk about how much of a threat this really is to Rohit Talwar, who's CEO of Fast Future and technologist. Rohit, thank you so much for joining me. Look, is this something we should be worried about, or is this just fear-mongering to a point?
Oh, I mean, from my perspective, the people who are peddling this nonsense have clearly been on a nil-by-brain diet. China is desperately trying to find different markets to the US. The US is its biggest export market. China needs the rest of the world to be growing fast and to be buying Chinese products. The last thing it's going to do is to say, let me switch off the traffic lights in London. Why would they do that? It's nonsense. They'll steal our data. They absolutely want to steal our intellectual property. But all the major economies in the world and a lot of the major technology companies are effectively doing that. So they're no different to anyone else, except they're a bit better at it. But their real goal is economic growth. They want economic dominance, technological dominance. They want to be leaders in energy, in artificial intelligence, in communications, in genetics, and quantum computing. Those are big fields of the future. They want to dominate them, and they're moving very fast to achieve that. This noise around them switching off your car or your traffic lights is largely driven by rhetoric from the US, because the US wants us to rip out any Chinese infrastructure and encourage other countries around the world to do that, so that the US providers of those things can come in. The problem is, and you talk to anyone who's commissioning infrastructure, and they say that the Chinese tech is better, it's cheaper, it's more reliable, and it's faster to install. So the US is putting a lot of pressure on. But I would say our biggest risk there is economically growing dependence on the US, because the US has such a stronghold that they can force us to reduce taxes on US corporations, to buy more of their kit. They're the ones who really have us over a barrel. You cited some figures about how much infrastructure China is invested in here. The US is invested in way more. And right now, with the instability caused by Trump, I think we should be more worried about that. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be worried about China stealing our data. They are definitely taking it. The security services know they're doing it. It's just the Chinese are very good at it. Another area that we probably ought to be worried about, the kind of people that would really want to switch off our traffic lights or cause infrastructure disruption are Russia. Russia wants dominance in Europe, but it can't do it economically and militarily, but it's very good at cyber hacking. So they're the ones more likely to want to disrupt us. And there's still, a lot of noise about whether they were the ones who disrupted and caused the fire at the power station near Heathrow. China certainly didn't do that because they own a chunk of Heathrow. Why would they shoot themselves in the foot? So we've got to be smart about this and say, where is it that China will play that, if you like, cybersecurity, cyber espionage, all that game? Where will they do that? Well, it's around getting the data that helps them become even more powerful technologically and economically. They have no desire to run the UK. They have absolutely no desire to be running us or dominating us or guiding our thinking. They just want us buying their stuff. And so I think we need to be realistic. The other thing is, the key point from that whole security committee was that for the last 30 years, the UK has been slitting its throat technologically. It's allowed all of our major technology companies to basically, drop into the ocean. It's allowed us to become dependent on companies from around the rest of the world. We need to be building our homegrown tech providers, partnering with European ones that we can trust, and taking a 5 to 10 year view that says, how do we wean ourselves off this dependency on all these other countries so that we're not open to shocks and we can really protect ourselves, but also grow the industries that are going to create the jobs for the future and give us the economic security.
Would you be happy? I mean, I take your point. What would be in it for China? A couple of questions for you, though. It's kind of like a nuclear deterrent. With China having such power over us in technology, say that they did invade Taiwan, and we wanted to put sanctions on them, or we wanted to be loud about, not being happy about that. There's always the threat, whether you use it or not. Putin's threatened with nuclear weapons for however long. It is the threat of it that keeps us compliant to Russia. And surely if we allow more and more infrastructure to be owned or potentially switchable to China, the greater control they have over us in the way that Russia does. That would be my concern, that we would have no power over them because of the threat that they could do something, whether they did it or not.
Well, if you look at China, the economic development of China hasn't just happened in the last 10 years. It's been a process since the mid-80s. And so we've had plenty of time to protect ourselves against that and to build up our domestic infrastructure, protect our domestic companies, grow new industries. So we're not reliant on any one country, and we're certainly not reliant on countries that have totally different political systems to us who we're nervous about, i.e. China, Russia. But we didn't do that. And so we've become reliant on them. We've become reliant on the US. We're less reliant on European providers. But we're in that position now where economically, China doesn't want to disrupt us. It doesn't want to do anything that disrupts the UK economy. And it will never have the threat of saying, OK, we'll switch off your traffic lights. Can you imagine the meeting of the Communist Party saying, we want to punish Britain because they've complained about the Uyghurs? Oh, let's switch off their traffic lights. I mean, they would be instantly sectioned if they came up with that. They are much more likely to say, let's do something economically, as we saw they did with steel. They weren't getting enough money. They pulled out. You could see them saying, well, we're going to sell off our stakes. The worst thing they could do to us is sell off their holding of UK government bonds. You saw what China and Japan did to the US when Trump went with tariffs, and they basically started selling off US bonds, and Trump ran for cover. That's their power. They own something like $3.5 trillion of US trade. They have in cash. That's bigger than the UK economy. So they have immense economic power, and they will retaliate economically they're certainly not going to stop power stations from functioning or anything else. They're not going to do
Rohit,
anything.
I'm going to just jump in there because, look, politics change, right? I mean, I know they probably won't change that much in China, but we thought that about America. We thought that the American democracy was secure. We thought that the system of Congress, the 3 tiers of Congress, executive and the legal system, we thought that would always keep people in check. That has changed in the last few months. So while I appreciate what you're saying and I understand what you're saying, that is reliant on nothing much changing in the world. That China continues to be the Communist Party, where, I mean, Xi won't live forever, that isn't then replaced by somebody who does want to see that sort of power. Surely we should be defending ourselves against whatever potential. Look, I'm a planner. Before I go to a party, I've got 2 exit strategies, I've got a way home, I've got a backup plan, and that's just going to a party, right? So
counting the windows, the doors.
Exactly. As soon as I get into a room,
to have a gun under their jacket. Yeah, you've been watching the Bourne movies.
Yeah, no, I just know that I need to get my way out of something, and if the world changes and we've been going, look, we trust China won't do anything bad. We trust that, then doesn't that make mugs of us?
No, I mean, we've been mugs for the last 30 plus years in not protecting our domestic businesses, not putting controls in to prevent them being sold to companies from around the world, not controlling who has stakes in our infrastructure, whether it's energy, roads, water. We've kind of given all that away. So we're in this situation now where it's owned by foreign investment funds, the US, China, and players. So where we are now is we've got to say, what is the smartest route through this? One thing is an accelerated development of UK infrastructure. The second is, unfortunately for all the Brexiteers, we probably have to buy more from Europe to spread our risk. But the kit isn't as good as the Chinese stuff. And we've got to probably wean ourselves a bit off the US stuff, but Trump probably won't let us. We need to diversify our risks. Our biggest threats in terms of infrastructure disruption come from Russia. They come from other kind of non-state actors outside the UK, from terrorist organizations, from homegrown terrorists. We're much more likely to see the kind of scenarios we could see is that someone switches off all the traffic lights in West London and the police and everyone go rushing there so they can launch some sort of, protests or riots or massive, robbing spree so they can all go and clear the shelves at Greggs in North London. That's the kind of thing we're more likely to see, or a consistent series of those disruptions that reduce people's confidence. There is no scenario I can see where China would say, let us disrupt the functioning of the UK economy. I can see right now that they want to extract all the data they possibly can, all our intellectual property, all our new ideas, all our data. They want all that so they can develop better products, get a bigger technological advance, and compete even more effectively. And our challenge is to grow the homegrown industry. That there isn't another defense mechanism that really works.
Yeah.
Because if we buy from the US, we buy from Europe, we're buying more expensive kit that's not as good. And no government wants to be ripped apart by the Daily Mail and all the others for saying you bought more expensive kit that isn't as good, even though they will also be clamoring for us to rip out the Chinese kit. So I think we've got to avoid this kind of ridiculous scaremongering about that kind of thing and focus more on the kind of economic and technological risks that we face. We have an almost technologically illiterate society when it comes to AI. That's probably our biggest risk right now.
What about when it comes to defence. I mean, I worked in defence for 9 years, and it always struck me as being particularly stupid to buy weapons and machinery from another country that could implant something in it. And there were conversations a while ago about these planes, American planes that we've been buying or planning to buy with kill switches in them. Now, it turned out they didn't have a kill switch, but the Pentagon updates them, the computers. So if the Pentagon switches off the updating mechanism, those planes become utterly useless. They cannot be flown even. And so we all know that if we haven't been putting back doors into weapons that we've sold to Saudi Arabia or China or whoever, then we're idiots. So surely that is where we need to be more introverted as well in the production of weapons and aircraft and tanks and things like that.
Well, and that's probably one of the areas where we're better off. We have got a number of domestic manufacturers. There's been a lot of consolidation under British Aerospace or BAE, but we have got a lot of domestic capability. We can grow that relatively quickly. We're talking about doing stuff built here, but partnering with French companies like Thales and others. I think, again, that's where European collaboration would have helped us more. It's a bit harder, but we can build that. And European allies are less likely to switch off capabilities in other people's kit because they're kind of trying to partner together. But we will be building that stuff in for sure in what we're selling. We should be growing.
We absolutely are.
Base ourselves. But, again, this is a very bad industrial policy for the last 35 years that's basically said, no, let's just buy it from anywhere and let's run down our domestic industries, which is very short-sighted and is causing us huge problems.
Yeah. And finally, if I can, what about this plane, this 400 million 13-year-old Boeing 747 that Trump is going to keep? That's going to cost billions, isn't it, to retrofit that? They've got to strip it back to the bolts in case there's anything hidden in it.
Well, who knows? But the figures I've seen are $350 million seems to be about the number being bandied about. And again, all of this nonsense about the Qataris and Chinese infrastructure in those planes, and when Donald's having a chat in the toilet, someone in Beijing's listening, it seems inconceivable that they won't rip out every bit of cabling in that plane.
They will. They
won't scan every millimetre for bugs, and then put in place the kind of secure communications infrastructure that they already have on Air Force One. They're not going to be using O2's dial-up services. and so we're hearing, Democratic senators who should be spending their time on far more important things like the suspension of habeas corpus, at them worrying about something like this. Donnie's done another good deal. He's got the plane for 4 years for free as a loan, and then it's his to use however he wants because it's a gift to his library. He's getting away with a lot.
Oh, my God, he so is. It's in the Fifth Amendment, isn't it, of the Constitution that he shouldn't. But you're right about habeas corpus, and that is something that is really worrying me at the moment with the US, and I'll probably be talking about that next week. Rohit, it's been a real pleasure. Let's talk again. I enjoyed that.
Definitely.
Great stuff. Rohit Talwar there, CEO of Fast Future and a technologist. Big break, back in a second.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here until 1 o'clock, and coming up at midnight I want to talk to you about boomerang kids. Adult children are increasingly returning to the family nest, with nearly a quarter of parents reporting their offspring have moved back home after moving out. How has that gone for you? These boomerang kids are typically staying for around 2 years, according to research. The average age of returning home is 26 years old. However, a significant proportion are over 30 when they move back in. How does that dynamic possibly work? How can it? Because they will insist on being treated like adults and yet behave like they're still your child, because they are still your child. No matter how old they get, they're still your child. But how do you navigate that? Do you charge rent? Do you, I don't know, share the shopping costs? I don't know how you do that. I mean, I absolutely adore my son. We get on really, really well. We talk to each other every day. Long conversations. He's just the most wonderful human being. I am absolutely in love with him. But I don't know. I don't think it would be easy flat sharing with somebody who doesn't pick up his towels. Drives me nuts. I always go, how do you expect that to dry on the floor like that? Oh, sorry. But anyway, maybe that's just me. I'd like to hear from you if you're a child who did, an adult child who did have to go home for whatever reason it was that you had to go home, you know, if you were the adult, what was it like when your children moved back in? Did you set ground rules straight away? Did you tell them about having to do their own washing, or having to do their own washing up, or to help out around the house? What did you do? How did you navigate adults moving into your home? 0344 499 1000. As much as we miss our children, it is joyous when you can just visit them, I think. And you can message me as well, put the word talk and then your message to 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and it is good to have your company, and it's time now to head over to LA to chat with Caroline Faraday. Well, that rhymes. Caroline Faraday, hello.
I always thought I had one of those names that was like orange or purple, but maybe it does rhyme.
LA Faraday. See?
Yeah.
We can go with that. I think that's...
Listen, everything rhymes if you're brave enough.
If you're brave enough.
Just
how are you?
confidently.
Yeah. How are you, my darling? You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. Hanging in there. I've won some more awards for you. You'll be delighted.
Oh, I'm not. Yeah, I'm so shocked. Which awards have you won now?
People ask me about it. Actually, they're really good journalism ones. The Edward R. Murrow Awards, and then and I've won a couple of regional awards. One, brace yourself, for diversity and inclusion, and one for use of sound.
What's diverse and inclusive?
Oh, it was a story about a female mariachi band.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
That's
Donald
very
Trump
good.
would be proud, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations. I'm not surprised.
Diversity. What they got was a nice white English lady to do the diversity award.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway,
The irony's not lost on me. That's all I'm saying.
yeah. If you ever do move, you're going to have a separate aircraft for your awards. You know that, don't you? I mean, it's ridiculous. The most awarded person I know. And you deserve it, my darling. So I'm really proud of you. Well done. Right, there is so much going on over your side of the pond, most of it in legal terms. So let's start, shall we, with the P. Diddy trial, day 2. So we heard about the freak-offs yesterday, didn't we?
It's so gross, but yes. Honestly, I love a courtroom drama, but this one's pretty grotesque. And it really is the ins and outs of all the gruesome goings-on of P. Diddy. And Cassandra Fine, who has been testifying yesterday, testified for a second day in a row. Bless her. It must be so traumatic, and it is so brave of her to go on that witness stand, to relive these awful things that you've got to then say in front of a room full of strangers and journalists. I mean, goodness me, just horrible to have to do. But anyway, she said that he repeatedly threatened her that he would release videos of her participating in his alleged drug-fueled freak-offs. She says that he said he would ruin everything that she'd worked for, that it would make her look like a slut, that I would be shamed. Of course, there was that hotel video in 2016 that was shared around where he was kicking and hitting and dragging her as Coombs faces those charges of sex trafficking, of racketeering, of transportation to engage in prostitution. And she's really the star witness of this trial. I mean, and
I was told yesterday, Caroline, they got her in early. They got her in this early because she is 8.5 months pregnant.
Yeah, she's hugely pregnant. In like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, so she's hugely pregnant. I mean, the stress of it.
Unbelievable.
I mean, goodness knows, because I'd given birth by 15 days early anyway.
Wow.
I'd have never made it.
Yeah, I was 5 weeks early, so I wouldn't have made it at all.
Yeah. But yeah, they talked about, you know, she said yesterday that she didn't want to be alive anymore. She was just so young, you know, in this testimony when she met him.
22, was she? Something like that?
Younger than that, I think, actually.
Yeah. Gosh.
Anyway.
But the thing is, though, that what we're looking at now, though, is that there's going to be... The witness lists have been, obviously, they've been shared between defence and prosecution, but not publicly. So I wonder if there's any surprise names on there. I mean, given that a lot of these were had many celebrities at them, you would imagine that there will be some well-known names on that list.
Yeah, I don't think that the defence's list of well-known names will be very long, to be honest with you.
No.
I can't see any of his star friends coming out in his defence in this instance. But yes, it's possible that the prosecution, they obviously have got a witness who's cooperating in Cassie, but with other witnesses, whether they are going to subpoena some witnesses and demand that they appear and answer questions. That's slightly risky from the prosecution because they don't know what they'll say necessarily in that circumstance. But certainly because of the nature of the people involved in this, the high profile, the salacious nature of what's going on, there is huge public attention on this court case to start with. Diddy, of course, denies it. He says, I'm guilty of domestic violence, but nothing else.
I mean, just even that sentence is so wrong, isn't it? It's almost blasé, almost just throw that away. Oh, well, I did the domestic violence stuff, as if it's not that important. But, looking at the way that young woman was treated,
they're very
it's
complex
every bit as important.
When you're dealing with coercement and threatening somebody in that way, of shaming them, not really getting consent. And I think that people are much more educated these days, women are much more educated these days in what consent means, and they need to be educated in what consent means, and men need to be educated in what consent means. That coercing somebody, threatening somebody into saying yes is not consent.
It's not consent.
It's not free consent.
Well, listen, the trial continues. It's likely to go on for a while, I would imagine, but we will no doubt pick that up at a later stage. Another trial, of course, but not happening in the US, but with a very famous US citizen, Kim Kardashian. She's been in court in Paris.
Yeah, listen, it doesn't matter what you think of Kim Kardashian. I happen to actually rather like her, but I know some people don't, and she can be a bit of a Marmite figure on that front. But what she went through in Paris a few years ago, in 2016, actually, it was flown, where she was robbed at gunpoint, who stole millions of dollars of jewelry from her luxury hotel suite, was absolutely horrendous. And she literally begged for her life from those people who had her bound up and gagged and were stealing from her, saying, I've got babies, I've got to go home to my babies. And it was a real ordeal. And it was in court yesterday in Paris, where she faced those alleged attackers for the first time. They are on trial for their crimes now in Paris, and the reality star Kim Kardashian appeared again as the star witness in that, explaining exactly what went on when they broke into her apartment. She'd gone for a nap, and had sent her own security had gone off, and nobody was there, and these masked gunmen broke in. They bound her up. She said first of all she thought she was going to be raped, but they bound her legs together and bound her to the bed. Then she said, I just thought I was going to be killed. And they stole millions of dollars worth of jewelry, about $10 million, about 7.5 million pounds worth of jewelry, including her big old blingy diamond engagement ring from her ex-husband Kanye West. And after that, you might remember Kim Kardashian, she sort of went through this demure period where she was like, I can't wear my jewelry. She was very shaken up by it, as anybody would be in any robbery. I'm not going to wear my jewels in public. She made a real show of not being frightened, actually, as she gave her testament in her own Kim Kardashian-y way by wearing an awful lot of diamond jewelry in front of these people, which I think was really quite a defiant act of saying, you won't change me, you won't change the way that I live my life, and sort of had that defiance. Yeah,
and she was hoping, wasn't she, that this would provide her with the closure that she needs. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great myths of our time, isn't it? We're always told you go through the justice system and then you'll get closure. And I think there's so much put on the idea that the justice system will give that, but you still have gone through the trauma. You're still dealing with it for the rest of your life. And it's
poor thing.
Very traumatic to come up against the people who put you through it. But yes, it is good to know that if, obviously innocent until proven guilty, but that they are no longer at large and able to,
Yeah, I mean, terrifying. Like you said, doesn't matter what you think of her. That to happen to anybody is absolutely awful. I think what I found interesting was one of the comments from the alleged robbers saying they didn't know who she was. That it was just by chance. I find that difficult to.
Tripped and fell over.
Yeah, just tripped and fell over the richest person in Paris on the day.
Who just put her big diamond ring on her Instagram account.
Yeah,
sure.
Quite. Yeah,
I don't know. I wouldn't exactly be like, oh, these guys seem like honest people.
Yeah,
I'll definitely take their word for it.
Let's talk about the Menendez brothers. This is interesting. This has been an interesting case for a long time. I've seen both the documentary and the drama. I've watched it all about these brothers who murdered their parents. And they said there were mitigating circumstances. They said there was sexual abuse. And this is the 30 years. They're 30 years they've been locked up now.
Seriously, this is going to make you feel old because this happened in the 90s, which apparently was not 10 years ago.
Was it not? God, that's not fair. That's rude.
So Eric and Lyle Menendez, these two brothers, never really denied killing their parents, but have told a sort of number of different versions of events, and certainly didn't act like grieving kids in the aftermath. And they've been trying to find a way to get out of jail eventually, and their sentence had prevented them from doing that. And then the Los Angeles District Attorney, Nathan, what's his last name? Anyway, it doesn't matter because he's no longer the district attorney. So it sort of started on his watch, and then it went away. And then it came back and has gone to a judge who had a resentencing hearing yesterday and today, but really the important information came out yesterday, which was that they did get this resentencing. And the importance of that resentencing is not, oh, well, that's it, they're going to be released in 6 months. But the difference in their sentence now, it makes them eligible for parole because of the age at which they committed the crime. So they are now parole eligible. It's kind of, their previous sentence was life without parole, and now they're 50 years to life, so that makes them eligible for parole. So it's a way of that judge giving the decision to release them over to the parole board. What the parole board are going to look at is not so much their original crime, but their conduct since they've been in jail. So they're going to look at whether or not they have kind of rehabilitated, whether or not they are considered to still be a danger to the public. Certainly they've talked a lot so far about how they've done education and those kind of things, that they've kind of become these transformed figures while they have been in prison. So I think there'll be an awful lot of hope from the Menendez camp that this will eventually lead to a parole board decision. I was actually with a different district attorney about 2 hours ago, and I said, will they treat them both as one? You know, will it be one thing for Lyle and one thing for Eric, or are they a joint entity? And he said it was a very interesting question. He didn't know the answer. But that is something that I'm quite curious about, because I think having watched the documentary, you could almost, I know how you can have degrees of egregiousness, but you know, that Lyle seemed to me to commit acts that were leading the brother towards it. Hey, when I say documentary, it was a dramatization, so it wasn't factual. But I think, you know, the parole board will be deciding, well, okay, they've spent most of their adult lives behind bars for the murder of their parents. Who are they now? Who are these people now? And are they a danger to the public? And that is a decision that the parole board are now able to look at, will vote on, and will make a decision on. Yeah,
well, it gives them, like you said, it gives them that
hope. It ends up with them released, but...
Yeah. They will. My money would be on them being able to swing that. We'll wait and see. Caroline, thank you. It's always a pleasure. Lovely to see you, and I'll see you very soon. Caroline Faraday there, live from LA. Quick break, and then we're heading for stars of a different kind.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And joining me now is Andy Lound, the space expert. Andy, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you? And how's Humphrey?
Humphrey is brilliant, thank you. Well, he's very naughty, but he's absolutely brilliant, thank you. He's at home with his big brother at the moment. Bless
Probably
him.
not as naughty as the man nicking food out of the last person's fridge, which we noticed.
Oh, yes, yes. No, he is. In fact, I accidentally keep calling him Bosley all the time because he is naughty. But anyway, let's talk about the news surrounding space at the moment. And I can't imagine that you're very happy about this. And that is that the White House is proposing the largest single-year cut to NASA in American history.
Well, a few weeks ago, you and I were talking about the Mars mission, and we're talking about Artemis as well, and SpaceX and so on, about private industry versus state-backed things. And I was pointing out to you that the cost overruns on the Mars mission was getting ridiculous to the point of view that they wouldn't receive the samples back till 2040. By then, Elon Musk has probably sent astronauts to the moon, to Mars, and got them back anyway. And that seems to be the viewpoint Trump's people have taken as well, looking at the ridiculous cost overruns. And their budget cut is quite staggering, actually, to a certain degree. Overall, it's a 47%
Wow.
budget cut. We have to put this in perspective. Now, one thing which is quite interesting, when I was working with organisations, basically American-based organisations, I mean, space enthusiasts, there seemed to be a lack of quite understanding on fiscal policy and fiscal needs when you're actually funding anything. And the budgets have gone up and up and up and up, and they're not getting, to be honest, value. I don't think they're getting value for money. Let's take the Mars sample return mission, which looks like it's going to be hit by this. This has been outlined since the 1970s as a follow-up to the Viking landers in 1976-77. It didn't happen, and they kept changing it. And each succeeding group of people were drawing up a plan to go to Mars to bring samples back, and this has gone on and on and on and on. Each time it's become more complicated. Each time the budget has gone up. NASA's working with the European Space Agency. Now, I like the European Space Agency and the work they do. I think it's fantastic. It's got brilliant scientists and engineers, but it's a bureaucracy which is crazy, and budgets are just crazy. So they're looking at a sample return mission at $11 billion now, and it wouldn't come back till 2040. And to be fair, I think Trump and his people are right saying, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? The Chinese are expecting to get samples back on Earth much quicker than that. And as we've seen with the moon samples, they've sent some of the moon samples to Britain for analysis. So the Chinese are willing to share samples for everyone to look at. So I think they're thinking, we're going to get men to Mars before we're going to get the samples back. So I'm sorry, we just need to do this. And the Artemis program, which is the, if you like, was NASA's homegrown mission to go to the moon, which again has been a 30-year ongoing program. It's had different names, but it's a 30-year ongoing program. And the Artemis spacecraft, which is this one here, which is Artemis 2, is due to launch at some point, which has been delayed again for 2 years. Artemis 1 was a robotic mission. It was on its own, came back, had heat shield issues, so they're having to redesign the vehicle. There's going to be a space station around the moon called Gateway. That's going now. They just can't afford that now. It looks like the budget has gone for that. Missions which are too complicated, are over budget, and are not practical. And we discussed this before when I said, well, the private industry has simply overtaken NASA and what was standard doing, and they're doing it much quicker, much cheaper. And I think that's what their Trump administration is looking at, saying, whoa, we really need to re-look at this and re-examine this. And I have to be honest, even though I'm a space enthusiast and I want things to be done, if you don't do it in a sustained way, you'll lose it all in the end. And I think there's an opportunity here for NASA. If you monitor how Trump works, it's quite clever. He'll throw this at you, and then you've got to come back to him then with another deal. Oh, no, wait a minute, we could do this, but if we do this and do this, we don't need as much money, don't cut us back as much as that, but we could do it for this. And that might meet the goals which he's putting into place. Because remember, he wants to put people back on the moon, and he wants to send people to Mars. To do that, you need certain things to be done. That includes robotic missions to bring samples back first, because you need those samples to work out how dangerous the soil is, perhaps to equipment and to astronauts' lives. So you could do with those samples back before you send people. But the way NASA was doing their mission, they were never going to get these samples back within a generation at this rate. And that's
do you think that it's ever going to happen that we stop seeing nations involved in space and instead have private companies do it? Because I think there's something troubles me about that. I think that you know, with private companies, there's always a bottom line. There's a reason for it. They do it for some other reason other than altruistic. And I think that space, like you, should belong to everybody. And when nations do it, I trust it more than private companies.
I'd like to say yes, but the problem is now it's a question of costs. I mean, yes, you can do it as a nation thing, but you're going to it has to be paid for at the end of the day. And you still go to the public out there and say, I'm sorry, we're going to put your taxes up because, yes, I know that we have issues with the plumbing and the roads and all that, but I'm sorry, we're going to go send a spacecraft to Mars because we're putting the mission. I believe you can afford to do it, but I think it's got carried away now with budgets, and I think the private sector should merge or if you like, work more closely with the state in order to do these missions. I think that's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Musk has been doing that quite successfully. I think that's the way it's got to go, because to be quite honest,
he's got a lot of money from America, hasn't he?
He has, because the SLS system which NASA are using for Artemis is just not sustainable. It's just not cost effective. It's not reusable, for starters, so that's not going to be practical. It's not working, and therefore I think the reality has got to be we've got to start having a bit more, if you like, better brain power in there. I think one of the great things, we saw this with Beagle 2. Beagle 2 was a brilliant idea. The problem is the scientists were allowed to run it without some outside project management skills from people. And if you had those in, you'd have probably had the mission successful, because they'd have started putting the red lines in, saying you've got to do this and you've got to do that and you've got to do the other.
This is always the problem, though, isn't it, with anything government paid for, is that, and people triple, quadruple, 10 times the price it, because they go, oh, well, it's from the government, so we can look at HS2, for example.
Exactly. I mean, we see this all through society with rent prices and things like that. Once the state started paying for people's rents, what do people do?
Put the rents up.
All the rents up.
Yeah.
And then mess the whole system. And you get that still in engineering. In the space program, I think that's happened. So I think we might see some sensible fiscal policies placed into it, when that will be more beneficial. So I think it's up to these people to go back to Trump and say, well, you've got these goals that you want to meet. We can meet them. Here is a better plan to meet them. And I think that's what he tries to encourage people to do, which, to be honest, is a sensible way to. It's an very old-fashioned way of doing it, but I think it might be practical. So I think the kick up the backside to NASA might be a good thing, because it has to go through Congress to approve anyway. So it's got to go through Congress to say yay or nay anyway. So we'll just have to see what happens.
And just before I let you go, the James Webb Space Telescope captures ghostly images of clouds on Saturn. Is that right?
On Titan, its moon.
On Titan, all right.
Behind me on your picture is Titan, this beautiful world, second largest moon in the solar system, dense nitrogen atmosphere with methane in it. So when sunlight hits methane in the atmosphere, methane breaks up and falls down as hydrocarbons onto the surface, and there's methane lakes on it. And what they were trying to find is, they knew there were clouds in one part of it, but they've now, the James Webb Telescope, found clouds in the northern region. Now this is important because we know the methane lakes are in the northern region, and they're trying to understand the weather patterns that happen, and that has been quite an important discovery, to try and understand the chemistry and activities of the atmosphere, because the spacecraft is going to be launched in 2028 to go to Titan. It's an enormous helicopter type device. It's a quadricopter, nuclear powered, which can fly through the atmosphere and land on Titan and explore that world as never before. Absolutely fantastic. And these pictures are now showing us that we're looking at a world here which could give us an insight of how the early Earth looked like 4.5 billion years ago.
Oh wow, that is really interesting.
And we'll understand the chemistries of it. really important, and this could be quite a fantastic and really important thing. Carl Sagan was a very big fan of Titan, and he came up with the idea and discussed the ideas of the possibility of hydrocarbons raining down with methane lakes, and people were unsure until the space Cassini got there and Huygens landed there, and he found it's absolutely right. That's what's happening. So and again, this is a mission which is relatively expensive, but it's quite cost-effective mission, strangely enough, and they've been able to do it relatively quickly. The vehicle is now ready to be built, so by 2035, I think it's aiming we will get details back from the surface and the atmosphere of Titan in more detail.
Wow. It's all very exciting. Thank you, Andy. Lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed for that. Andy Lound there, space expert. Stay where you are. Papers next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and this is Petrie, and with me for the next hour is Phil Dave, Talk broadcaster and editor. Hello.
Oh, hi.
We were just saying you were
How are you, Lady Hosken?
You were meant to be on holiday, so it completely confused me when I saw you on the rundown.
Yes.
Because we'd said goodbye to each other last Thursday, Wednesday, whenever it was.
Yeah.
And I said, well, have a lovely holiday. That'd be great. And then,
thanks. So far, the holiday's going great, I've got to say.
Well, you're here. Come on, this is like a holiday.
This is actually the last thing I am doing work-wise before actually going on holiday tomorrow.
Yeah, all right.
So I was supposed to go yesterday, didn't work
Never
so
plan
well.
a holiday with Phil Dave because it'll get cancelled.
I was supposed to go on Tuesday. That was it. I was supposed to go on Tuesday. That didn't work so well, so alas, I'm now
I would never plan a holiday with you because it would be cancelled.
Yes,
yeah, that's just
amazing.
Happen.
I just have the most uncanny knack of wasting money.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Well done. Listen, before we get to the papers, I want to talk to you about Boomerang Kids. And I know that you lived at home and then you bought somewhere. Could you ever imagine going back?
Well, it's really strange because I have a couple of times wondered if I was to go back, now that I've had the freedom of my own place with my own rules, could I deal with it? And the short answer is no, I really couldn't.
No.
Because I feel like now that I've had the taste of that lifestyle, it would be very hard to adjust back to a household where there are rules because it is not my own home. And also just even as something as simple as sitting in the lounge area and me having total reign over the television.
I know.
It's something as daft as that.
No, it's not.
I don't have to liaise. I don't have to negotiate. I don't have to arrange a time slot that I can maybe watch what I want.
Yeah.
And it's just quite nice.
I just think the dynamic.
Something very selfish, I have to tell you.
Yeah. Oh God, I am. I tell you. But it's just a dynamic that I don't understand. Is that, I mean, for example, my beautiful boy, who you know well, he's a terrific human being. I absolutely love him, and I like him enormously. He is a fantastic boy, and I'm very lucky with him.
I don't know where he gets it from.
I don't know where he gets it from either. He's just wonderful. But anyway, he came to stay with me for a week over Christmas. Right. Because his girlfriend was at her family's and he was working, and we would normally go to our family up in Shropshire, but because he was working, I stayed back with him because I haven't had a Christmas without him, right? Ever. Oh, well, since he was born. I did beforehand, but
thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I just thought I would. But he reverted to son, to child. Now, I always used to say to him when he was growing up, I'm not your friend, I'm your mother, right? So,
You still are.
I know. And that's the thing, that I know in his home, he behaves differently to how he behaves when he's with his mum. So, I would cook. I like to cook, so I would cook. But I know that, in his home, he would then be stacking things in the dishwasher. And if I'd asked him, he would have done. But it's just that, going back to the sunlight, the towel on the floor, and me saying, "Oh, is that going to dry like that?" in a passive-aggressive kind of way, and why are your showers so long? What do you do in there? All of that kind of thing. And will you?
It's because he's not paying the water bill.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I'm saying. But also with the screen, my shower screen, which I really love, and I'd said to him,
"Your shower screen's nice. It's sort of like a New York apartment."
Yeah. It's lovely. It's really nice. So I said to him, I said, "Can you just wipe that down when you've had a shower?" And he went, "Mum, that's rude."
How is that rude?
How is that rude? And he said, "You don't ask guests to wipe the shower screen." I said, "Yes, you do, actually. And by the way, you're not a guest." So I can spend hours with him. We spend hours a day talking on the phone. We spend a lot of time together. We get on really well. I just don't think that dynamic, I don't know where that would be about doing his own washing or hanging the washing up or all of that. I don't know how we would cope with that.
I can sort of answer that in the sense that for a week, I think it was, a couple of years ago, not long after I'd actually had bought my place, I did move back home. And that was because my father and the rest of the family had disappeared off on holiday. And my mum wanted to stay at home because she was worried about leaving the then dogs in plural. Sadly, we don't have them in the plural anymore. And as much as I understand her thinking, because at the time both dogs were quite old, she was very worried about something happening to either of them. And she didn't want to be... It was sort of a case of she didn't want to be away
in case
if something happened.
Yeah, I get that.
And I was going to say, I know that you probably could relate to that sort of thinking as well, but it was bizarre because Monty, who is the dog who we have, he's 17 in a few months' time. So he's going strong. He's a very healthy dog, all things considered. Well, I say he's healthy. He's a bit of a porker, to be honest. But other than that, he's a good dog. And he's given portion sizes that my mother would give to anyone who enters that household. So I'm not in the least bit surprised that he's mildly obese as a sausage dog. But he's less of a sausage dog, more like a watermelon dog, to be honest.
More like a burger.
Yes, he is. He's more like a burger dog. Anyway, I digress. The point being is that she refused to go away, and as a result of it, I moved back home to go and make sure that she was okay. I was still going to work during the day, so she's still on her own for a lot of the day, but I have no regrets of doing that. But it was curious because I just thought to myself, simple things that I took so much for granted, living in my own place, such as doing my washing on my terms as and when I want to. It was a case of Mum saying to me, "Well, what washing have you got? I'll put it on." I said, "Oh no, don't worry about it. I'll do why, what's wrong with the way I do your washing?
Oh.
No. There is nothing wrong with the way you do my washing, but I will do it because A, I am a big boy now, I can do my own washing, and secondly, I don't really want to add to the workload. That was not the idea of me moving in here. So, yeah, I can totally understand.
Yeah, I just think it must be really, really tricky to try and negotiate that. And do you charge them rent? Do you,
So I was never charged rent, but I tell you what it was, because I lived at home until the age of 36.
Yeah.
But that was more of a cultural thing. I'm not being funny, it's really commonplace, you know, so that it's the same with Italian families, Jewish families, it's all about family stick together. And as and when you sort of go off and have your own family, that's the time to move away. Now, obviously, I don't have my own family, but I was quite determined to have my own place eventually. And unfortunately, living in and around London, the earliest I could actually afford to move out was at the age of 36, because a couple of reasons. I was absolutely determined to do it on my own. I had no help. I didn't want any help. You know, for many generations, my family have been buying their own property without help from their parents, and I was quite determined to do the same. But I suppose you could say that the help came in the form of my parents letting me stay at home rent-free
so
until the age of 36.
Yeah.
But the difference was that I did obviously contribute towards shopping and bills and stuff like that.
Yeah. I moved. I sold the house as soon as my son moved out.
I know you did, yeah. You weren't going to run the risk of a return, were you?
No, I wanted to downsize, and I didn't need a 4-bedroom house. So I mean, that was just yeah. But he did go. Oh, I see. I've got 2 bedrooms now, so he could still come back.
Yeah, but one of them is an art studio. So
no, that's at the back now. Got the new art studio built at the back.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. It's been a while since I've been invited round.
Yeah, no, it's now a bedroom again.
Yeah.
Right, let's have a look at the New York Times. They've really, one of the comments I will say about American papers, they don't hang about with putting as many stories as they can on a front page.
The American papers like that are absolutely ridiculous. It's almost to the point where you think, why would you bother buying a paper? Especially when you consider the New York Times here is this is not an advert, I'm just stating a fact, is $4. So you think to yourself, well, hang on a second, I've read most of the news on the front page. Why am I going to bother buying it and reading through it?
Yeah, it's very, very busy. Let's just pick the emboldened president jumps ethical barriers. This is to do with the Qatari jet. Is deepening corruption concerns. During President Trump's first term, the idea that special interests and governments were buying meals and booking rooms at his hotels to offset legal and ethical alarms about the potential for corruption. It does seem, I mean, the $5 million ticket to have dinner with him at Mar-a-Lago and things like that do call into question potential corruption.
Well, it's apart from anything, it's just a bit odd, you know. I suppose we're used to
it's unethical at the least, isn't it?
Well, we're used to in this country former prime ministers, because I suppose that's the only thing we can really compare to, because we also, thank goodness, don't have presidents over here. But the only thing that we could really compare it to, I suppose, would be prime ministers and former prime ministers. That, and we are used to them making money off the back of them having been a prime minister. You look at someone like Liz Truss. I think that now that she's made so much money for the short amount of time that she was in office,
40 odd days,
she's basically made way more money than her 40 days.
But we kind of don't mind that. But look, when Keir Starmer got free suits and free glasses, the country erupted into, you know, scandal and corruption. And did this mean that Ali got a free pass to go into number 10 when he wanted to and sit in meetings? And they, you know, there was a promise there that they would clamp down on that sort of stuff. So I suppose for us, seeing a $400 million jet from the Qataris, it would not be accepted.
I wouldn't have thought so, but at the same time, I believe that unless someone has truly been in that position and they can hand on heart say categorically that they would never ever take, and even if it's not that position, let's look at it on a much smaller scale. If someone was to turn around and say they would never take advantage of a situation to either get something for free or something nicer as
a president, though, from another nation that has been backing the Houthis, you know, I mean, this is and Hamas, you know, this is a very specific question with Qatar and the Middle East in general.
Yeah, look, But at the same time, it feels like sort of that people will always put Trump under a microscope, but at the same time, you tell me one world leader who is ethically and morally
listen, that doesn't mean that
faultless.
it's right, though. It doesn't mean that it's
Maybe,
right.
but then
And
how would we stop it? And the
well,
answer is
I
we
mean,
can't.
the Constitution can stop him because it says that no president shall take any gift from any country, king or whatever, because of the fear that that could lead to special favours, and that could lead to all sorts of things going on. You know, he says, oh, this has been given to the Defence Department, but it's only been given to the Defence Department for 4 years, and then he takes ownership of it.
Get the benefit of it, yeah.
So, and it's going to cost the American public a lot of money. Some people are quoting $5 billion to turn that £300 million gift into a worthy Air Force One. So there are. I mean, even Republicans are coming out and saying, "Look, this is not a good look. This is not a good idea."
No, and I don't say it is a good look. There are many things that Donald Trump does that I don't think is a quote-unquote good look. But at the same time, I believe that if we think he's the only person or the only leader in the world who's doing something like this,
we know he's not. But he's supposed to be. We would think America and the UK, other democracies would be above that kind of thing, especially when it's actually in the Constitution, specifically worded for this exact situation. But you know, Trump will lift sanctions. I think he already has now on a devastated Syria. What do you think about this? He's saying that they need to have a reset now. Now they've got rid of their al-Assad. That lift the sanctions, see where they go with it. Personally, for me, I think it's too early because we don't know who's running
Well,
Syria.
I was going to say, I mean, I wouldn't mind if I thought for a second that Assad's successcer was any better, but I really don't.
But they were ISIS, weren't they?
I was going to say, they're actually part of a prescribed terrorist cell, for crying out loud. So these are the kind of people that are Iranian-backed proxies who we've seen exactly what we've seen exactly what they've done with the likes of Iran, Persia, as it was. We've seen exactly what they've done with Gaza Strip since they took that over in 2005. We see now with the Houthis, you know, it's just ridiculous. You know, these revolting individuals who are the absolute... They're just they are the cancer of the human race, let's be honest. And he's now talking about potentially doing deals with them or lifting sanctions. I think it's personally very risky at this stage. But
again, he's trying to play to the Middle East, isn't he? So it is...
Well, look, Donald Trump has got a good reputation in the Middle East. People can't argue that. You know, the Abraham Accords and what he achieved with that is very impressive. He certainly did what no other president managed to do.
Well, it depends. We're going to wait and see what he does now, because with Gaza and with Israel, because the Abraham Accord, they've already said, Saudi Arabia's already said, look, the only way we're going to continue with that is if there's a two-state solution. So it'll be interesting to see if Trump pivots now. And certainly Benjamin Netanyahu is really worried about Trump being in the Middle East at the moment, because they know how easily he appears to be influenced by the last person he spoke to.
True.
So Israel is worried.
I think Israel is unnerved. I don't think worried yet, but I mean, I agree that sort of there's certainly Netanyahu who would appear to not necessarily have the friend he thought he had in Donald Trump in the first place. But look, I mean, the thing that amuses me about this idea of two-state solution is people have very quickly forgotten, as much as they love to dwell on the past when it suits their narrative, is that actually there was a two-state solution already in place. The two-state solution was called Jordan. That was supposed to be that so-called second state. And at every step of the way, it was rejected. So, I mean, it's... The problem with two-state solution, yes, it's an ideal, and yes, for the record, it is something I would love to see as well. I'd like nothing more, because then it ultimately shuts down that whole debate. It literally it will shut up anyone in the world who says, oh, but there's no state for people who identify as Palestinian. Yeah, you're right, there isn't, but ask yourself why there isn't. And as soon as we get to a place where there is that second state, and so many other millions of people around the world be very happy. But unfortunately, you're dealing with people who don't want that second state because it doesn't suit their bid or efforts to annihilate Israel. So it's a very tricky situation.
You're absolutely right. It is. But and I wonder if Donald Trump tries to simplify it too much. But it will be interesting to see, because he's making a lot of money over in the Middle East. He's being gifted with towers and planes and
the Trump Riviera, apparently.
Yeah, he's being gifted with billions of dollars worth of deals that directly help him, not America. So it's all about him at the moment. But will that sway his view on the situation in Gaza? And that is what I think people are worried about.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this to me is as unnerving as the time when Barack Obama, who everyone thought was this wonderful president, where I always thought he was corrupt and vile, he signed a deal with Iran on nuclear. And this to me is as worrying as that.
Yeah. I entirely disagree with you on Barack Obama. I've read his book. He's brilliant. Anyway, time to find out now how you could be in with a chance of winning a weekend away in Munich at the end of May. Don't go with Phil, because it'll be cancelled. Watch the biggest game in European football, the Champions League's final. We're also putting £5,000 in your pocket to spend however you like.
Win a once-in-a-lifetime trip to watch the Champions League final live.
Go to talksport.com/win for your chance to embark on the ultimate odyssey of football ecstasy.
With 2 tickets to the Champions League final live
At the iconic Munich Football Arena, Germany, including flights, accommodation,
and an uber-massive £5,000 in your hand.
How about that?
Enter online now at talksport.com/win.
terms and conditions apply. Achtung, baby.
18 plus, UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win all of that, simply text the word football to 83338 by the 16th of May at 11 p.m. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or send your name and number by post to Champions League final competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 21st of May. This is a TalkSport limited competition run on TalkSport Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Yeah.
So have a go at that. That will be absolutely fantastic. That's courtesy of our colleagues at TalkSport. Good luck.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and with me, Phil Dave, Talk broadcaster and editor. The Times newspaper, if we can, Phil, early release for sexual offenders as jails on the brink. We might as well give up on jails then, if we're going to let...
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't know what's the point. I really don't know what the point is. Who are you going to
jail if it's not sex offenders?
Well, no, I tell you who you're going to jail. You're going to jail people who put something hurty on Twitter. That's what you do. I just don't understand it. You know, how is it possible that the vast majority of people in this country, and I don't know the exact numbers to hand, but let me put it this way, for all the people I've spoken to about this, and there are quite a lot, I have not heard one person who has said, yeah, it's a really good idea to let out convicted criminals early. Not one person.
This is a little bit more sinister than that, I think. It's domestic abusers and sexual offenders recalled to prison after breaching licence conditions. So they've broken the law again, whether that be on I don't know, they've breached their conditions, will be allowed out again after 28 days. So what's to stop them from completely...
Nothing, absolutely nothing. And this is the problem. And how does this make the... I don't like the word victims because it sort of puts someone on like a sort of lower plinth, if you like, but how does that make those who are the victim, in the absence of a better word, of those kind of crimes feel? It makes them feel like they are the second-class citizens. It makes them feel like that they are irrelevant in this, and it probably makes them feel as though, well, why would I bother speaking out against something happening to me if all that's going to happen is the revolting, disgusting cretins who carry out this kind of thing in the first place are just going to be allowed to roam free and do it again. Yeah,
we just have to ask the question: what is prison for if it's not for the worst of the worst? I mean, you've got people who non-payers of the TV licence fine. You've got people who haven't done anything, that is particularly damaging to other people. Maybe a tax fraud or I don't know. I mean, tax fraud obviously is illegal, but things where they're not going to hurt somebody else. Those are the people you let out. Surely the white collar crimes, not people who have beaten somebody or sexually assaulted somebody.
Well, of course, the thing
it just seems to be wrong-headed.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous. I believe that the biggest problem we face at the moment is that if we are that low on space in prisons, and even if it's a small number, it doesn't matter. It's a number that shouldn't be there at all. Deport foreign criminals. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If you've got criminals who have foreign passports, who were not born in the UK, why the heck should the UK taxpayer pay for those people? It's bad enough we have to pay for criminals as it is, but I suppose you could argue at least by paying for them it's supposed to keep us safe. Well, this doesn't say, this says otherwise. The point is, if we deport foreign criminals, let them become their country's problem once more, and then that frees up at least some space in prisons.
I suppose the argument with that would be jurisdictional justice, wouldn't it? It's like, well, they didn't break the law in Albania, they broke it in the UK, so it's over to you to...
Yes, but clearly they want to be here.
Yeah. No, listen, I'm with you. I'm just throwing in that argument is the one that will be used.
Maybe, but I think I understand that is the alternative argument, and that's the other, you have to put that point across. But my argument to that would be it's irrelevant, because what we're saying here is that this is someone who costs the UK taxpayer money, and let's be honest, they probably haven't put too much into the UK tax
and they've
system.
Most definitely had free legal support and 50 grand a year at His Majesty's pleasure.
The other thing that I can't understand as well is that sort of, you look how quickly the previous government, the Conservative government, managed to erect the BBC Stockholm, for example. So we actually had a floating barge that, let's be honest, people wouldn't be able to go anywhere. They'd have to, if they actually sort of move that out into the middle of the ocean somewhere and use that as maybe an overflow, a couple of those as overflow prisons, whilst we are building new prison facilities. Even if we have it so that lesser offending criminals are on tag and very closely monitored and under house arrest almost, there are ways that we could manage the prison system and make sure that we have the prison spaces we need. And anyone who says that the older jails that have been shut down because they're not fit for purpose, I would argue, sorry, but I don't really care if they're fit for purpose. I just don't want those people on the streets. Simple as.
Well, there'll be a lot of people that agree with that. The Times, no surprise here. I mean, this is just driving me absolutely nuts. All the lip service that Trump has given. Putin and Trump snub Ukraine peace talks. We knew that Putin wasn't going to go. I would have put money on it as soon as it was mentioned. In fact, I said it wouldn't happen because he doesn't want to trouble himself with it. And Trump won't go because Putin's not there. But poor Zelensky is going to be there trying and fighting to get peace. And, I don't even know what to say about it. It's just so awful.
Yeah, look, the situation in Ukraine, like all conflicts, is far from ideal and very frustrating. Not least of all, I think what's most frustrating is the knock-on effect that it has to people all over the world, and in particular in this country, the cost of it. You know, whether that's a case of supplying weapons to Ukraine, whether it's a case of the knock-on prices to consumer goods, whatever it is, the whole situation is not ideal. And if it's a couple of individuals, and in this instance you've got Putin, really, his actions are costing the world a fortune.
Yeah.
I don't...
If he stopped shooting, Ukraine would, because Ukraine are only shooting back. So it's just stop. But the fact that Putin isn't going to bother himself to go, and Trump, who was giving it all this about, oh, I'm going to bring peace within a day and I'm going to do everything that I can, he's literally flying that way. Why isn't he making a show of going to this peace negotiation and making his best buddy Putin go along as well? When it's been so downgraded that it means nothing to either of these men, it just feels like such an insult, such a snub to the people of Ukraine, who are still being bombed into oblivion. I mean,
you got to wonder how it ends, though.
Well, it certainly doesn't end without Putin and Trump, who's inveigled himself into the situation, actually bothering their backsides to go and sort it out. That's how it doesn't end.
True.
I mean, it's just... let's move on to the Sun newspaper. Mexit pairs Montecito invite. What? Harry and Meghan host Brooklyn and Nick to help in Family Feud. To help?
Yes.
How can they help in a Family Feud?
Necessarily suggest that Prince Harry or Migraine would be able to help anyone in a family crisis.
No, since they're great at creating
I was going to say, I sort of feel like they're the best examples of how not to do it. But anyway, it would appear as though that the debacle surrounding Brooklyn Beckham and his wife Nicola Peltz and the rest of the Beckham clan is clearly deepening. I have to ask the question, who cares?
I have to ask the question, what the heck is it doing on the front page? Because no one does. Yeah.
You see, and the Sun has definitely at least got something right on the front page, and no offence to our friends and colleagues at the Sun, but at the top right corner, thousands get jail time reduced. Thousands of criminals will spend less time behind bars.
That should have been the other way around.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what we want to focus on.
I mean, literally nobody cares about Harry and Meghan, and I barely know who Brooklyn and Nick are. So, I don't care that rich people, incredibly rich people, have fallen out with their families. Boo hoo.
Well, I don't think there's a financial status makes any odds as to whether or not they've fallen out with the family. I just don't care.
I think
period.
It's got everything to do with it.
No, but I just don't care. Period.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You know, it's very frustrating to think of all of the problems that are going on in the world and also in this country at the moment.
And they've put that on the front page.
And we're expected to give a hoo-ha about Brexit. Nah, you're all right.
No,
Thanks.
you're okay. You're all right. Let's take a break. Phil and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, with me, Phil Dave. Going through the papers for Thursday. The Daily Express new demand to reverse cruel winter fuel cut. I don't know how many times Keir Starmer is going to have to say it, but he has said no, he is not for turning.
Yeah, look, the problem is with the winter fuel allowances, I think now it's got to a point where Starmer and Reeves are just trying to make a point.
I agree.
I think
they always were.
They know full well that it is wrong and that they should never have done it. But now, if they U-turn, they're no better than the Tories who U-turned every 2 seconds. So, to my mind, I believe that they won't drop this now. They're just going to carry on regardless. But what frustrates me, and I think so many others, is that there are so many other ways that this country could be saving money. You know, the waste within the NHS, who has access to the NHS, and not to mention the legal aid to foreign individuals who break into this country illegally. You know, all of these ways that we could save the country billions of pounds, and he goes after people who have paid into the system all of their lives. And that is what annoys the heck out of me, and I can't understand it at all. And even if,
it was always a political move. It was they
it's
did
politics of envy.
They did it before any sort of budget discussions or anything. It was a couple of weeks into their. They'd already got that planned. They wanted to stick it to the pensioners. They wanted to prove a point, and they wanted to have something they wouldn't reverse on, and that's what they got.
Totally, and not to mention, of course, this miraculous £20 billion hole that they always speak about, which they created,
which is now 50 billion.
As a 50 billion. Okay, there you go.
Oh, it is now because of them. No,
yes,
they filled that and then emptied it again.
Let us not forget that they created the vast amount of that because, of course, the amount of money they had to pay off all of those who were striking, who, by the way, are now talking about striking again.
Which I said they would.
So,
in fact, they said they would.
Yeah, so I don't really sort of think that they've
paying
done
off the doctors,
anything.
and the doctor said, well, we're coming back. We want 32%. We've said that, and that's what we're going for, or 35%.
So the only way to deal with people who strike is threaten to sack them. That's the only way to do it. So, however, the point is that with this particular revolting policy it's just further proof that Labour will never put the UK taxpayer first.
Yeah, well,
ever.
And Reeves will come to us in October for more tax, without any question. Lovely picture there on the front of the absolutely fabulous and wonderful Hannah Waddingham, who is a brilliant actor and stage performer and singer, and she's just fantastic.
And someone who never ages.
Oh, she's just the best. I absolutely love her. And there she is in Cannes, because, of course, Cannes has opened up this week.
Have you been to Cannes?
No, I haven't.
Me neither.
No, I'm not posh enough.
No.
Or glamorous enough, or rich enough.
I feel like we could keep up with the drinking, but I don't think
I definitely think we could do that, but I don't think we could keep up with the poshness
drink responsibly,
of it.
by the way.
Yeah. It was just we're just too common, Phil.
We are.
The Daily
Hard to
Star,
tell by the way we speak.
Yeah. The Daily Star, disappointing again. I'm sorry. We're going to have to put in a call because they've stopped with all the fun. But this is Big Fat Gypsy Theme Park Battle. TV Paddy's Traveller War on roller coasters. I don't even know what those words were that came out of my mouth just then. Gypsy King Paddy Doherty has warned Universal Studio bosses they face a battle with travellers living by a planned mega theme park who fear they're being forced. Is this the Bedford one?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's... hang on a sec, wasn't Gypsy King the one who's saying Bamboleo? Yeah. That was
a different Gypsy Kings. Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's
not from that.
I thought he didn't look very Spanish.
He's from a TV show from years ago about gypsies. Because of the Big Fat Gypsy Wedding? No.
No.
It
was... oh, crumbs. What was it called? Because the wedding one was a film, wasn't it?
And he seems like a really nice guy, actually.
Wasn't it actually just called...
It was about travellers, yeah.
Oh.
But it was called something... I can't remember.
But
anyway...
It was. Yes. So it's TV's Paddy Traveller War on roller coasters. I mean, look.
So obviously there's a traveller park near where Universal want to build this studio, and they're saying there's going to be a battle. But I think Universal might
like
win.
The Battle of the Roses or something.
Yeah, I don't think they're talking physical battle. There's some land rights or something. I don't know. The Guardian, the Guardian. Right. The minister accused over surge in meetings with US big tech firms. A senior cabinet minister has been accused of being too close to big tech after analysis showed a surge in his department's meetings with firms such as Google, Amazon, Apple and Meta since Labour came into power.
I want to know what constitutes too much, because who are papers or authorities or commenters, whoever they are, who are they to say, right, maybe you can have 100 email communication, I'm just pulling a figure out random here, 100 email conversation with a tech giant, and then that becomes too much. Where's the threshold? How do they know it becomes too much?
I mean, I think, again, the question is if people get too close to these tech bros or those technology companies, will they hold them to account over things like cybersecurity? There's always that line, there's always a fine line between, look, this is a totally business situation, you've got to clean up your act, and listen, buddy, do you want another bottle of Cristal while we discuss stuff? And I think that's possibly where the line is. What number that is, I don't know, but I can appreciate why there would be that line. Because you just get too close to people, and therefore you don't then pressure them.
I guess, but at the same time, isn't there something in the whole keep your friends close but your enemies closer?
Well, only if your enemies are actually going to do what you want them to do. I suppose if you get too pally, it doesn't bode well. Nice picture, though, as well on the front page. A mission selfie, the cast and crew of Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, at the film's premiere at the Cannes Film Festival last night. So you've got quite a few of them there.
I'm slightly surprised Tom Cruise can't afford a haircut. And I know full well that that's a bit rich coming from me, as I am somewhat follically challenged, if you are listening to this. But at the same time, I don't think he suits the mop, personally.
Yeah,
Sorry, I know that's not what this story is about. I'm passing just an opinion. Because he was just, so for me, growing up, watching Tom Cruise in the original films, and especially in Top Gun as well, you know, he was such a cool guy, and someone who he was also a bit of a style icon to so many as well. And now I just look and think, what happened? Come on, come back.
Yeah, no, I think it's you know, he's in his 60s. He's probably just showing off he's still got hair. That's
some
what
of us can only dream.
And there's lovely Simon Pegg there, and that gorgeous Hannah Waddingham again as well. I'm looking forward to seeing that film. I just because it looks like fun. But Tom Cruise, he must be impossible to insure.
Yeah.
He does do those stunts. There's some footage out of him doing a stunt in a helicopter, out of a helicopter.
Well, that's where Mission Impossible comes from, is the insurance companies.
Yeah, that's the mission that's impossible, is getting him insured.
Do you think finally, for the final film, that they succumb to it and just admit, yeah, you're right, this is too difficult, and that's the film?
That's the
they
whole
admit
film.
Defeat.
Yeah, no, look, it is impossible. We're not going to do it. We're going to go and sit on the beach.
Yeah, can't do it.
Nice short film.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice short film. Right, so that's the Guardian. The Daily Mail, yet another plan to go soft on criminals. That's their front page. Tom Cruise and Hayley Atwell on the front page as well for the Cannes Festival. And the trial of rap legend Diddy. So there you go, that's on the front page of the Daily Mail. The Mirror, blah, 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 teen drug arrest mystery. This is an interesting little story. I don't know if you've been reading this. It's an 18-year-old who went to Thailand and was missing. He went missing in Thailand and was found in an Eastern European prison, having been arrested on drug charges, and is now in jail. And they're saying, oh, she's not a drug trafficker, but she was found with quite a large amount of cannabis on her. And
that's not a great look for someone who's not a
it's really not. They're saying, oh, she must have been taken advantage of. Every parent would say that, wouldn't they? But they're suggesting now that she's pregnant. This isn't on the front page, but there is a suggestion I was reading earlier that she's actually...
Oh, I did see that, actually. I did read that.
Yeah. Dream holiday to jail hell. There you go, Bellamy.
So here's the problem with things like this, is that it leaves more questions than answers, and I hate papers affording people the chance to speculate, because it doesn't help. We need the facts. We need to know what happened. And I'm fully aware there are some cases where we'll never know the facts. You know, Madeleine McCann is obviously the most obvious example of that. But I guess I just don't like the way that sort of in the name of a front page, we say, well, what about this? What could have been this happened? No one was there. We don't know.
Yeah. But worst nightmare if your child is in a foreign jail. Trust me, I know.
I don't think we need to go into that. Okay,
do you remember that though? Oh my God. It was completely nothing, but I mean, at the time it was everything. I'll remind you in the break. Let's quickly go have a look at the Daily Telegraph. NHS offers treatment to trans toddlers under sevens. Well, under sevens aren't toddlers, right? I mean, that's just silly hyperbole. The NHS is treating nursery-age children who believe they're transgender after watering down its own guidance. The health service was previously set to introduce a minimum age of 7 for children to be seen by specialist gender clinics, claiming anything else was just too young. The limit was removed after the proposals were put out to consultation, with new guidance due to be published showing that children of any age are eligible.
I genuinely despair. I can't understand it. Because how on earth is it possible that a child who hasn't even gone through puberty could even possibly know that? How? It's just ridiculous. It doesn't make sense at all. And I'm sorry, I don't care what anyone says. I think it's tantamount to child abuse. I really do.
Listen, I'm not going to argue with that with you, because I do as well, in terms of the age of them. But the exact number of under 5s has been withheld, and so it's probably not very many, I would suggest. And
it shouldn't be one.
157 children under 10 are waiting to be seen. But there has been some advances on this, hasn't there? They're saying now that they want to check every child for autistic tendencies or for mental health issues. So maybe that's the kind of treatment that they're offering. It doesn't necessarily mean, well, they wouldn't be on puberty blockers because they're not at puberty, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything too
just shouldn't be taken seriously at all. Yeah. You know, children like to play dress up. I'm not being funny, but it is perfectly possible that a child who is in their younger years thinks, say for example, a boy might think, "Ooh, what's that? Well, you know, why is it that she gets to wear a dress and I don't?" That doesn't necessarily mean they want the transition.
No, of course it doesn't. A friend of mine's son wore a princess dress to his 5th birthday, I think, and slept in it and loved it and all of that. But you know, he's definitely not trans. He's not or gay. So yeah, I mean, I agree. Listen, there's got to be some sense poured into this, but I'm hopeful that the treatment that they're talking about is the kind of talking treatments or discovery treatments to figure out.
But it wouldn't even entertain it. Literally wouldn't even entertain it as an idea, because it doesn't need to be entertained as an idea.
No,
you can't possibly know at that age that that's the kind of thing. And people will say, you know, sort of when they're older, "Oh, I knew from a very young age that this was." No, you're possibly picking out holes in your childhood that would say that this behaviour was in line with, or certainly conducive, or completely conducive with being someone who is trans in later life. It doesn't mean that you knew at that age. For crying out loud, the only thing I was worried about, so like at 5 or 6 years old, was whether or not I was going to get my sandwiches cut up into the shape I liked. You know, I mean, that's literally the kind of thing you worry about. I'm using it as an extreme example, but that's the kind of thing you worry about.
Actually. That explains a lot.
Look, I'm just saying that as an example.
I think we're going to take a break just so we can
I'm saying that's how trivial things were.
Stars or little fishes or...
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk. It is Petrie and it is Phil Dave.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
I've got a message from Gary. He said, "Evening, Petrie. So chuffed to see you and the delectable Mr. Phil Dave on. I almost choked on my curly whirly when I heard that he was going to be on." And that's from Gary.
Gary, you do know how to make a guy go bright red.
Yeah. And I did see your message yesterday, Gary. I'm very proud of you. Well done. He's now using his chicken carcass to make stock and soup.
Oh, superb work.
Yeah.
As someone who would not necessarily eat it, but does make occasionally chicken soup, too right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Don't waste the carcass. It's
no.
Brilliant. Right, back to the papers for Thursday. The Metro, you killed our beautiful boy and we'll never forgive you. This is a drug factory blast. A drug dealer whose illegal cannabis sweet factory in a block of flats blew up, killing a 7-year-old boy, has been jailed for 14 years.
Is that all?
For good behaviour, will be out in a week.
It just
to make room for the...
Oh, just even I'm reading this as well. I've heard about this story and I'm not just seeing it. Just makes it real when you see the photo of the chap. This is Archie York, who died, and
he was just asleep in bed.
He was at home. He should have been safe at home, and instead you've got this lunatic drug baron or drug dealer and just making a farm or whatever.
In a block of flats. I mean, seriously.
You know, this is why we must never stop the war on drugs. To anyone who says, oh, we've lost the war on drugs, don't give up fighting it, you know, because until these scum are erased,
the thing
is the problem.
If you were able to legally buy cannabis sweets at a cheaper rate than he was going to supply them for, he wouldn't be making them. That's always the other argument.
Yeah, but then the argument would be they wouldn't be strong enough and they'd still have them on the down low.
I don't know. I mean, it seems to work in a lot of states in the US with cannabis sweets and stuff like that. Financial Times... new chapter, Trump softens stance on Syria. Too strong Tesla board committee explores new pay deal for Chief Musk. I would have thought they'd have asked him to step down by now, but there you go. Post-Brexit reset talks with Brussels stall over fishing and youth mobility. So there you go.
Kills the breeze.
Now, let us go to some of the stories that you have picked. A popular shop returns 18 years after vanishing. I saw this. Was it popular?
Well, I think it was in its heyday. I certainly remember it being quite popular in the early 90s. But I also can't believe it's nearly 20 years ago it went into administration. That's what I can't get my head around. This is MFI, by the way. So
MFI.
It was seen very much as the... There's one for the kids. It was very much...
They won't even remember. They're looking at me blankly.
What? MFI? What's that? It's the rival to IKEA, basically.
Well, it's a rubbish rival. It was rubbish.
It wasn't completely terrible.
It was sort of flat pack, cheap.
Yeah. It was cheap flat pack furniture, and to be fair, IKEA got it right, MFI got it wrong.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah,
and
basically.
That's why IKEA survived and MFI didn't.
Yeah.
But the problem with MFI was that IKEA just did it so well that until IKEA became as popular as it was in this country, to be fair, MFI was also quite popular. So,
well, it was, because that was all we had until we got the Blurg Flurg bookcase.
Yeah.
Or the Flugen Glaben bed.
Are you making these words up?
Yeah, I really am. But I think they do as well, to be fair.
I'm fairly sure.
Fairly sure they make them up.
They're not it. Well, I'm quietly confident
I
think that sort of the name Billy and bookcase is probably not a made-up word, but even so. The bottom line is that MFI apparently, that in spite of going back in administration about 18 years ago, could be making a comeback to the high street because the new owners, Victorian Plumbing, who is in itself a high street retailer, I think, but it's mainly online, but I think they do have high street as well. So it comes 18 years after it fell into administration, closed all of its 111 stores. I didn't realise that it had that many. The retailer was once known as Affordable Kitchen, bedroom and flat pack furniture, and just struggled to remain profitable in the 2000s as a competition from IKEA, and even actually B&Q and Argos also intensified their production of flat pack furniture, and MFI ceased in 2008. But Victorian Plumbing, they're saying that as part of its acquisition, in May last year. They're now potentially planning to bring MFI back to the high street.
Yeah, I've used Victorian plumbing. It used to just be called Victoria Plumbing, and then they changed it to Victorian Plumbing. I mean, I don't quite know why, but...
So here's the thing. I thought that was the case, but I also have seen that both those names still exist.
Yes,
I
agree. I'm confused, but it is the same company.
It is, okay.
I think they're just different branches, I think. But anyway, I've used their services. They're extremely good. And look, if they apply the same... Because their stuff is quite... It looks really good, but it's quite a lot cheaper. So if they apply that to MFI, they could be a real contender to IKEA. As long as they make good stuff that looks expensive, then maybe that will work.
Do you remember what MFI stood for? Because I can't.
No.
I'm going to look this up because it's going to drive me bonkers. Hang on a second.
I used to always call, when I was a kid, I used to call MI5 MFI.
Close enough. I
want to go and work at MFI. What? I want to be a spy. Oh, you mean MI5?
Oh, OK. MFI stood for Mullard Furniture Industries. There you go.
Well, that tripped right off
No
the
wonder they changed it to MFI.
Yeah, I'd have another go at that if I was you. A mother's warmth turns children into kind, creative adults.
Well, I'd go with that because, I mean, to be honest, it's sort of worked for me. It's worked for your air and spare. So, you know, there's got to be something in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure it's absolutely the case with everyone who is lucky enough to grow up in that kind of surroundings, but there's definitely something to be said about sort of if you've got a parent who is very good and very caring, it somehow gives you this safety blanket, I believe, that gives you the confidence to go and get what you want from the world.
I totally agree with that, but I also think, and I also know, that even if you've had a very difficult childhood with not much of that swimming around, you can also turn out to be a kind and compassionate person.
Totally.
So
absolutely. And by the way, I mean, I sort of say that's based on my own mother, who's not completely secret about it, and she had a very tough childhood, but yet she made sure that was not going to be the case for my sister.
That's what I did.
And that's
what I did.
Precisely why.
I did everything that my mother didn't do.
Yes. No, to be fair, I mean, my mum's mum was incredible, right? And someone who I still, even after so many years of her not being around anymore, I still miss her every single day. But it was my mum's father who was a bit tricky, which is why it doesn't thrill me too much when people who knew my late grandfather say that I remind them of him. I don't know why, but anyway, let's not dwell on that too much. So yeah, but still, it goes to show that I think that sort of family life can play a massive part in how someone can turn out. This is just an article that was in the Times.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's obvious. I think it's fairly obvious, but just a nod to all of those people who weren't lucky enough to have a great childhood, and they still doesn't mean that they're not wonderful, incredible people. Right, we've only got a minute. Which one do you want to look at?
Oh, let's go with. Should we go with the gamer?
Yeah, go on then.
I just think because there's this headline caught me. There's a gamer who's aged 25 develops terrifying dropped head syndrome. From looking at his phone too much, and doctors issue a warning. So these Japanese medics that have detailed case of a 25-year-old chap whose neck has become so weak from the habit of looking at his phone, he's now actually unable to lift his head. And it is something that does bother me terribly.
The picture is horrible.
Oh, it's grim. It's really, really grim. I'm speaking to someone who has suffered with neck ache for a long time, and it's not a good
Just do your phone like that.
Absolutely. Look up.
Look up. Phil, Dave, thank you very much indeed. Have a nice holiday, although it'll probably be cancelled, but, you know, just do have a nice time. Right. Coming up, it's just you and me for the phone-in. So it's a full hour of us just talking. Nothing else there. A few breaks in the way, but that is it. There are no guests. There's nothing else. Just you and me. And what I want to talk about is about boomerang children. I want to talk about whether you have had to, at some stage in your adult life, have had to go home and live with your parents or parent, or you as a parent have had to through gritted teeth perhaps, welcome your offspring back home to live in their old bedroom. How did you navigate that? Was it easy? Did it work out? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000, a message 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Petrie here with you for the next hour, and I want to talk to you about the rise in boomerang kids, so-called because they come home after they've left. Adult children are increasingly returning to the family nest, with nearly a quarter of parents reporting that their offspring have moved back home after moving out. Yeah. Just when you thought it was safe to pad around in your dressing gown and slippers all day and not eat anything but cereal until 10 o'clock at night and watch any television programme that you want to, whenever you want to. Maybe that's just me. But just when you thought you could do that, suddenly they're home. And that's the problem, isn't it? Because as parents, you love your kids, mostly. You sometimes even like them. And you live with them for, let's say, 20 odd years, right? 20 odd years, and it's nice and it's great and everything. But the day that they move out, oh, it's lovely. It is. It's a nice feeling. You've done your job. You've made them independent members of society. That's your job. Send them out. Go on then. Go now. Fly. And they do, and they go and rent somewhere, and they get a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a partner of some description, and they start living their life, and it's lovely. And you just think, there you go, I did a good job. I did a really good job. They've got a job, they've got income, everything's working out well. And then suddenly, they go, well, actually, my son did say this to me a little while ago, because he's not long moved into a new flat, which is lovely. I'm very, very pleased for them. But he said, yeah, we'll probably live there for a couple of years, and then we'll move in with you, so we can save for a mortgage. I'm like, I would almost, don't tell him I said this, I'd almost offer to pay their rent in full so that they could save and didn't move in with me. I love them. I love both of them. Who I hope will be my daughter-in-law, adorable, adore her. She's the best thing ever, and so is my son. But I don't want to live with them. I'll be honest, I don't. I really think that would be very trying and very difficult. So have you had to have your children move back in with you? I mean, even if it's through ill health or something like that. Maybe your kids have had to move in with you because you've not been well, or you've had to move in with your parent because they've not been well. You've still got to negotiate and navigate that child-parent thing when you're both adults. And I don't know how I would successfully do that. So I don't know if that makes me a particularly horrible person. Maybe it does. Maybe you can call me and tell me that does, that I'm horrible. I'll listen to you. I suspect you're probably right. But I can't be the only parent that wouldn't relish their adult child moving back in, just because I don't know how I would navigate that. And I kind of really like the way I live. I love it. You know, I've got my home the way I want it. I've got everything is just lovely. And yeah, of course, if they were in trouble, they could come and stay for a couple of weeks. But the average stay is 2 years. And increasingly, it is children of the age of 30 that move back in with you. So, have you had to do that? Have you had to let your child move back in with you, or you as a child have had to move back in with your parents for however long it was? How did that go? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Or it could be a sibling. It could be any, yeah. When my brother was unwell, oh, it still is unwell, there was a question about, you know, where he could go and live, and I was thinking, he can't, I would have to give up my whole life, and I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to do that. Again, you might think that makes me a horrible person. Just ring and tell me if you think that's the case. So, could you imagine moving back home? Give me a shout. Send a message, by the way, it's talk and then 87222. Let's speak to Cindy, who's in Michigan. Hello, Cindy. Did you get my happy birthday message the other week?
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
God.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we couldn't call you back for some reason. There was a problem with the line. So I did say happy birthday to you. So I'm sorry that you missed that.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
That's so sweet.
I'm sorry that you missed it.
Flutter right now.
Well, at least you know the date of it. You can go back and have a look at it on YouTube. Maybe it'll be there.
Course.
It'll be
I'm
there.
a premium member, so.
Ah, yeah, you see.
And just for talk.
Yeah, well done.
The premium. Mm-hmm.
So you can do that. Well, listen, Cindy. It's good to speak to you. How have you been?
Really good, really good. You know, I have a 59-year-old sister right now who's been living with my parents plus one with her boyfriend. I also have a 40-year-old sister,
right,
about 40-ish, or 42, something like that. And she's never had a job in her life, never had to, because mom and dad take care of her in between her marriages.
No.
She's had two. Yes. Yes, and here's the thing. They think, you know, some people, we've all had our problems in life. And yes, as children, we were abused, deeply verbally abused. But they've carried on in life thinking that my parents, my parents are in their 70s, by the way, late 70s. And they're not abusive anymore. But they think that my parents owe them, is what I think.
Wow.
And my sister wants to come live with me, my older sister.
With her boyfriend?
I'm not really sure. With her boyfriend, yeah.
Say no.
I think I was going to say I'm not sure how to navigate this. You know, I think there comes a time in your life where you got to be on your own and you got to stand on your own for a while and get past whatever happened. I lived in the same household, and I got over it.
Yeah.
You know, you get over things. You have to, because if you don't, you stay stuck in a world of hurt.
I completely agree, but your poor parents, I mean, do you think that they allow this sort of boomeranging because they feel guilty?
Yes, I do.
Right.
Yes, I do.
Interesting.
Yes, I do. But it's interesting because the youngest, who's in her 40s, she gets extremely pampered. Like, she can do no wrong, which is really bizarre. The one who's never had a job in her life.
So she
She
stays...
thinks she knows everything, yeah.
Yeah, she stays at your parents', gets married...
With her daughter, who's my niece.
Moves out, and then when that marriage ends,
comes
straight back home.
With her daughter. And the second marriage, she left her daughter, my niece, with my parents. Didn't even take her special needs daughter with her, which broke my heart. You know, I don't understand. How could you leave? Yeah, how could you leave your special needs daughter?
That just sounds incredibly selfish, doesn't it?
Yeah, incredibly. Those are my two sisters. I'm the middle child.
So what about the older sister? Why has she boomeranged at nearly the age of 60 back to your parents?
I understand that San Diego is a very expensive place to live, but you get roommates. I don't know what they're called in the UK, if you call them flatmates or roommates, housemates. You make a way to live for yourself. I did before I got married and before we got a house together. I lived with two. I had two flatmates. Yeah, you can afford to live on your own, but you deal with it. That's life.
But your parents obviously make it so much too easy for them. Do they move back in and financially contribute, or is it all paid for by your parents?
My younger sister does not contribute a dime. My older sister does contribute, but I don't feel nearly enough. I think she gives my parents like 500 quid a month. But to have your own place, even a little studio, which is not even a bedroom in San Diego, is well over 1,200. And if you had just without a bedroom, just a little tiny studio.
But are they working, your older sister and her partner?
No.
Oh.
They're not.
I mean...
They're not.
That's just a case of just never growing up then. I mean, when I left home, I knew there was no way back. There was no way either of my parents, there was a room for me. It just wasn't going to happen.
It drives my family, my aunt, crazy. It drives me crazy. But if I try to say anything, I'm the bad guy. I'm the bad guy, and it gets talked, it gets told to my sisters, and then they want to fight with me, and I'm the villain for speaking up. So now I don't say anything because there's a lot of dysfunction. I can't say anything.
Well, you can't have your older sister move in.
I'm thinking in some ways there's a little part of me that thinks maybe I can help her, maybe encourage her to get a house with her partner. Maybe I can do
that while she's at your parents. Why does she want to move out of your parents?
She wants to move out of my parents and come stay with me and my husband, which I'm in Michigan.
But why?
She's there in San. She feels that they don't want her there, but I don't think that's true. I think they're very kind to her. I don't see what she implies to me, that she feels like she's not wanted there, but I don't think that's true.
Yeah, but just imagine, right? You want to help her, you want to rescue her, and she and her partner move in and never go. They're in nearly 60.
Yeah,
they're not working. They're not going to leave, Cindy. You're going to be stuck with them.
That's true.
You're going to be stuck with them. No.
Yeah.
Just think of the life you've got with your husband and, you know, all of that. The freedom to, like I said, walk around in your dressing gown all day if you want to.
And the truth be told, though, there's a part of me that's awfully lonely, too. But, you know, you got to think of, would it be worth it to you?
Yeah.
Would it be worth it to me?
Yeah.
Because what if when I'm not lonely and I've had enough and then they don't want to go?
Well, I mean, you can help them look for, I mean, is it cheaper to live in Michigan than it is in San Diego? Help them look for an apartment that's close to you where you can see your sister, but they can live somewhere else. And it's cheaper, so they'll be able to afford it.
That would be a fantastic way to go.
Yeah.
And I think I've thought about this, and I think if I set the ground rules before it happens, then there's no way for there to be something else that happens.
Yeah, I mean, they
if
can
you're firm in your ground rules.
Yeah, they could come up and stay for a week or two while you look for an apartment. And then they could stay with you until that apartment, they've paid a deposit or whatever. So you know there's an end date to it, and then they can move into that other apartment. But don't just say, yeah, come and live with me.
Right.
That's madness.
You're right. Ground rules.
Ground rules.
Yeah, because I don't want any chaos.
There has to be an end date. There has to be an end date. So it's like, okay, we found you an apartment. You can move into it in 4 weeks or whatever. You can stay with me till then. But there has to be an end date. You can't just let her move in.
Ground rules are key.
Ground rules.
I think you're right.
See, everyone's going to think that I'm really mean, but I just think I know. No,
it's not mean. Boundaries are good, and that's something that I've all of my life have struggled with, and that's I'm in therapy, so that's something that I'm working on. Ground rules.
Boundaries, they are difficult to set. They really are, because you feel like it's mean, or you feel like you shouldn't say it, or you feel like, but it's more honest as well.
People have a tendency to misunderstand ground rules and directness. They have a tendency to misunderstand that for being mean, and to be honest is not mean. To tell the truth and set boundaries is not mean.
No. It's really not. And if you just say to her, look, you know, that is it. And she's your sister. So, you know, it's not as if she can dump you. You know, you just say, look, I'm sorry. That's just the way. I'm happy to help you this far and help you find somewhere and help you until that point. But that's as far as I'm prepared to go.
Yeah. I think you're right. I agree with you.
Do it.
I agree with you.
And if you don't want to have that conversation with her, play her this conversation, because you can then you can blame me. So it's all down to Petrie. She said it.
Told me that.
Yeah.
No, I would never. I can handle this. I can completely handle this myself.
I don't mind. I've got broad shoulders, Cindy. I can take it. Send my love to your husband, won't you? And
I will.
And I will speak to you soon.
Lots of love.
Lots of love.
Lots of love.
Take care. Bye now. Cindy in Michigan, bless her. Yeah, I just know. Oh, maybe I'm just set in my ways now. Give me a call. Come on. There must be others out there who would not want a sibling or a family member moving in to their space. Let me know. And maybe you've had to do it. You've had to do it because you can't afford the rent, or you're saving up for a mortgage, or whatever. Let me know. 0344 499 1000. You can message me. Put the word talk in your message to 87222.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and we're talking about the rise in boomerang kids. And if you are a parent of a certain age and your children have fled the nest and you're thinking, hurrah, finally a bit of space, a bit of peace, a bit of my own life going on, be aware that nearly a quarter of parents are now reporting that their offspring have returned. Boomerang kids, they're known as, typically staying for around 2 years, making the phenomenon more complex. Some parents reported their returning children brought partners or even their own children with them. The trend coincides with recent data highlighting the crucial role of parental support in helping young adults onto the property ladder. The Trade Association's research shows that first-time buyers receiving family assistance purchase homes at an average age of just over 30, compared to 32 and a half years old for those buying without help. Surge in rental prices has also seen a lot of young people need to return home. Combined with a decline in new landlord instructions, this suggests that rents will rise again over the next few months. The NatWest research, this is other research, has found that 85% of parents believe that it is more challenging for first-time buyers currently than it was in their era. That should be 100%, I think. Parents are also making their own adjustments as their empty nests are refilled, with more than half of those, 55%, with a returning child having given up a dedicated home office or guest room. Yeah, you get rid of the posters on the wall, make it all nice, and then they want to come back. I don't know. Just over 2/5 of mothers would be happy to welcome their children back as adults. That's 42%. As we're just over a third. That's making me feel bad now. You're making me feel bad. That makes me feel bad. I'm just honest. I don't think he wants to move back in with me either, frankly. You know, as much as we adore each other, except for, like you said, in 2 years' time, when he and his girlfriend want to save money for a deposit. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to move out. That's the only solution. 60% of parents said they do or they would charge rent. I wouldn't get away with it. My son wouldn't pay me. He'd just say, I'm saving for a mortgage. I'm such a pushover. Many children across the country are having to return to the homes that they grew up in well into their 20s and 30s to give themselves financial headroom to save for a deposit. So there you go. That is that. And there's a couple of great articles actually in the Times from Wednesday. The cost of living is forcing many adults back to their parents' homes, and they've written it from the point of view of two young people that have had to move back in, and they're not happy stories. They're really, it doesn't seem to work out that well. That's what would worry me. The wet clothes, the floor drobe, the wet towels on the floor, the not mopping up the floor, not putting the mat down when you're having a shower or a bath and getting water all over the floor. I can't bear it. I cannot bear it. I've already got a puppy that steals my slippers and hides them. I'm not going to have a son that doesn't hang up his towel. It's not going to happen. So let me know if you think I'm just being a mean and uncaring parent, or do you actually agree with what I'm saying? Because look, 20 odd years I lived with that boy, man and boy, and gave up my whole life for him, as you would expect a parent to do. I don't expect a medal. Well, I kind of do, but I won't get one. And then they leave, and it's nice. It's like you still see them, and you still. But I can now walk into a room, and the light's not already on, and been left on all day. And I can now go to the fridge, and the milk that I put in there is still in there. And I quite like that. And I can, put stuff down and it's still where I left it, like my headphones, without, oh yeah, I borrowed them. So yeah, I don't know. I've got set in my ways, I think. And I don't want that disrupting. Hans has said, you are in no way being a horrible or uncaring parent. Thank you. By having legitimate qualms about having your grown-up offspring live with you. Perhaps you can foresee problems should your son's girlfriend accidentally become pregnant. Oh my God. Why did you say that? Becomes pregnant, or who does what around the house? Hans, you've just introduced a whole different level of angst, pain and worry. So thanks for that. Oh, God. Shaz has said, regarding the lady who is uncertain about her sister staying with her, I think once her sister moves in, she won't want to move out and take on the responsibility of managing her own home. That's the problem, Shaz. That's it, isn't it? That's why I said just let her come and stay for a couple of weeks before she moves into a flat that they've already signed for and put a deposit down for. It's the only way. It's the only way to do it. So listen, give me a call. So Hans has just introduced another circle of hell. But would you want your children to move back in with you? Have they had to do that? And how did you negotiate it? Was it really easy, or did you feel that the whole being a parent again? Because I think you revert. It's like when my dad used to take me out for dinner or for lunch. It didn't even occur to me to pay for it. Even in my 40s or 50s, I wouldn't have, because he's my dad. That's what I'm talking about. It didn't occur to me. I wouldn't cross my mind, because he was my dad. And it's the same when I take my son out. I mean, I wouldn't ask him to pay anyway. I would see that as my job. But you kind of revert into those roles of mother and parent. So I just think that would be the nightmare. So listen, give me a call, 0344 499 1000. You can message as well, 87222, put the word talk up front. Time though now to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning a weekend away in Munich at the end of May to watch the biggest game in European football, the Champions League final. We're also putting $5,000 into your pocket to spend however you want.
Win a once-in-a-lifetime trip to watch the Champions League final live. Go to talksport.com/win for your chance to embark on the ultimate odyssey of football ecstasy. With 2 tickets to the Champions League final live at the iconic Munich Football Arena, Germany, including flights, accommodation, and an uber-massive $5,000 in your hand. How about that? Enter online now at talksport.com/win. Terms and conditions apply. Achtung, baby.
18 plus, UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win all of that, simply text the word football to 83338 by the 16th of May at 11 p.m. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or send your name and number by post to Champions League final competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 21st of May. This is a TalkSport limited competition run on TalkSport Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
So there you go. Don't miss out on that incredible opportunity. That giveaway from our colleagues at TalkSport. Good luck.
UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and we're talking about boomerang children and the problems that can happen when you have to live back with your parents, or your parents have to let you back in to live with them. It is so difficult as an adult child to not revert to somewhat being the child, and the parent not to revert to somewhat being the parent, and it's the parent's home and they've lived in it on their own and nicely for a while, and they're quite happy with living there on their own with their dogs and their cat and their lifestyle, and they're, you know, deciding to go and do a bit of painting at, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning and traipsing through the, you know, that's the way that some parents, me, live, and I like it. I like the freedom. And after 20 odd years of not having freedom, and as a parent, that's what you do, that's what you sign up for. It is lovely. I'm not going to lie, it's lovely. So let's go to the phones now, and Tristan has called in from Bedford. Tristan, is this making you come out in hives, the idea of living with your parents?
No, I just feel like if I was in a situation where I had to move back home, I would feel I was giving up.
Yeah, there is that.
I couldn't contemplate. I moved out at 18. I've lived in 2 other countries. I suppose I'm a very independent person, but if I had to, I mean, God forbid, if I had to say, can I move back home, Mum? She'd be like, why? What's happened and everything like that. And if I said, well, I want to save up for a mortgage because I do rent, she would be like, well,
how long is that going to take?
Yeah, But yeah, as I said, I think anyone that is happy to do it, in my eyes, I just look at it as I'm giving up. I've failed, and I've got to go back home, back home to my parents, and I've got to just definitely not.
I tell you
no
what,
way.
For me, I mean, I was pretty much kicked out of home when I was just before I was 17, because my mother went through a second divorce, and to my stepfather, who wasn't a very nice man, and she moved into a smaller house, and she said there aren't enough bedrooms. As simple as that. So I was out. I was gone, and I always knew that I would not be welcome back. I mean, it's no surprise that my mother and I are not close. We're not friends, but it is. I just knew that there was no way back. But I wonder. I don't know how old you are, Tristan. How old are you?
I'm just turned 41.
Okay, so 41. I mean, I'm a good deal older than you. And so I suppose in those days, things were cheaper. It was definitely cheaper to buy a property.
Yeah.
You could lie about what you were earning. The self-certification mortgage was the best thing in the world. And I was able to buy a property when I was quite young. Even if I didn't live in it, I was on that ladder. And I suppose I wouldn't see my son as failing, because his rent is so high.
I know, so is mine.
Yeah. So how can you save?
Well, I mean, the thing is, when I moved to Bedford from Luton, I moved into a 3-bedroom house, and it was £1,000 a month. And I moved out this year, and it was £1,500 a month.
What?
And I've moved into a 2-bedroom place, and I'm paying rent's gone up again, and now it's £1,050. And I think to myself, hang on a minute, when I moved into the other place, the 3-bedroom place, that was £1,000 a month, and I did actually want to buy that house, but the landlord wasn't happy to sell it to me at the time, and then the rent just carried on going up and up and up, and he carried on putting it up, And in the end, I had to move out this year and move to a smaller place, still in Bedford.
Yeah.
I still made sure I wanted to live in a nice area and stuff, you know. I suppose if I wanted to live in a shoebox, wanting to live somewhere where it wasn't a nice area, then obviously I probably could start put money towards it.
But there's no life then, is there? Yeah, I mean, I know Bedford. I've got a very good friend of mine who lives in Bedford, and it is
live in a nice area.
Yeah, it's it is lovely. It's much nicer than I ever thought it was, actually. But it really is a pretty place, and I don't blame you for wanting to be there. But what would happen, Tristan? I mean, look, your rent's going up. What if you lost your job? I mean, I don't want to pour doom and gloom on you, and you were in a position where you thought, God, through no fault of your own, you know.
No, but I mean, a couple of years ago, because of things, I could notice things going up. I was like, well, I have to have a second income. So in the past couple of years, I've always thought to myself, I've got to have a second outlet. And obviously with me having Crohn's, and I know how my health is a bit unpredictable, you know, you think of all these different scenarios and all these different things, really. And the thing is, my parents, they live in Lincolnshire, so I would have to do a lot of moving.
That's a big difference.
You know, but you know, they're happy, and I've had to help them. So, you know, with the fuel allowance, different things like that, and my dad chose to retire, you know, and so I don't know. It's just a case of, unfortunately, we know how the climate is with, you know, with the economy and everything like that, and you know that, you know, so many prices of different things have gone up. Energy is a huge outlay.
Burden. Yeah,
I can't believe how much I'm paying on energy, you know. But I mean, I don't know. It's difficult, but you know, it's either fight or flight. It's either you sort of have to give up and sort of, you know, accept and move into somewhere even smaller, or God forbid, go back home to live with your parents. Or you tough it out, and you know, I mean, you know, it's just, you just have to tough it out, I suppose. It's
difficult. I mean, difficult with Crohn's, because even holding down one job is tough enough, right?
Yeah.
Let alone thinking I've got to have a second income.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I suppose it's just, you know, there's not many Crohn's people that have that sort of mentality that I have. I mean, I always had the mentality of not having a bag. I had the mentality of not having any permanent operations. So my focus was always definitely not having a bag, definitely not having a permanent operation. I will do whatever I can to make sure that doesn't happen. So, you know, but obviously
you pay the price for that, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, I've been in a situation where I've been homeless before through my own stupid fault a long time ago, but I was homeless for a week. And the thing is, I knew that if I let it go on longer than a week, I know it's going to spiral out of control and it's going to get unsustainable. But when that happened, I didn't even tell my parents, because I was embarrassed what they would think about me. And it's something that would probably, you know, they would sort of bring that up now and then. And so, you know, but as I said, that's the mentality that I have. It was my own fault. It gave me time to think, you know, and see different things. Yeah, you know, and so if I had to move back home, I think, oh my God, I'm having to give in here, and I would be very angry with myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's just you. That's where you've set yourself, isn't it? Like, I won't fail. And it look, I think that a lot of people go home. I'm going to say this at the risk of young people shouting at me, because they're not prepared to do the flat share. They're not prepared to do the, you know. I mean, I lived for a year on a friend's sofa. In London. I mean, when her boyfriend wasn't around, we would share the bed because we were old school friends, you know, childhood friends. When her boyfriend was around, I'd sleep on the sofa. We lived together very happily. In fact, we went travelling together, and had a whale of a time. But I'm not sure. I think a lot of young people now we're going, well, I want my own place. I want a flat and I can't afford that, so I'm going to go, perhaps go home until I can afford that. Do you see what I mean? Whereas we just bundled on. We just, wherever I lay my hat was my home, for a while.
I sort of look at it though as someone that if you decide to do that, I think in my eyes, I think you've got a defeatist attitude. I mean, when I lived in America, I ran out of money after 6 months. Called my dad, and he said, "Well, you come home then." And I was like, "I don't want to come home because we'll get a job out there then." So, it's a case. Well, he put me in a situation where do I go home with a tail between my legs, or do I stick it out and even though I went on my own, do I go and and get myself sorted? And that's what I did. But as I said, I think it comes down to a lot of that your mentality, and I think a lot of people have that sort of mentality where they would just go, "Oh, I can't do this. I'm giving up. I've had enough. I'm going back home. It'll be easier then."
Yeah. Yeah, or just being prepared to live in not ideal circumstances so that you're independent. I mean, that is also the thing that I always just wanted to be independent. Well, I knew there was no way back anyway, so it wasn't even an option. It was never an option. I mean, my dad, a lovely chap, but there's no way he would have ever sanctioned any of us moving back in. It just wouldn't have happened. There's just no way. It doesn't matter what situation we found ourselves in, that would not have happened. And my mother, as I said, no chance either there. So it just never occurred to me. So I had to just do stuff that I had to do. And maybe that's the thing now, is that perhaps parents are a bit softer on their children, maybe.
Yeah, but I think it's a case of that sort of generation where people will just sort of accept things. You can go on another way. I mean, people, they're overweight, so what do? They take a drug. They don't go and work out and try to lose the weight the correct way. They can go and take, I'm
all for it. I think if you've got a headache, take a pill. Don't work at it. These drugs are invented for a reason. I think it's brilliant. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that there is that rush to that satisfaction, instant gratification thing that we've been trained. We've been, to expect. That's what we expect now. We expect that. I just know that. Look, I would do anything for my son. Anything.
I know you would. You talk very highly of him, and I know you would. But
he is the most.
Draw the line?
Yeah, moving back in with me. I just know that would be a massive sacrifice.
There you go.
And I like I said, I would almost be going, well, let me pay your rent for a while. Then because I like my peace, so shoot me. It's nice. It's lovely to live your. I mean, you must know that, Tristan. It's just lovely to be able to have your own world that you've crafted, right? You've worked hard for, and that.
Yeah, I mean, I like to work out, and I go and work out downstairs. If suddenly I rocked up with my weights and stuff, and I'll be like, "Oh, don't worry, Dad. Can you just get out of the front room for a minute?" He'll be like, "What? What do you mean, Tristan?" I'll be like, "Well, I've got to work out, and you're in the front room, so can you disappear upstairs?"
Or even just cooking or wanting to watch something on the telly. I mean, I was just saying to my team that during that lovely time that my son stayed with me over Christmas, and it was lovely, I had a PlayStation 5 plugged into my television in my living room the whole time. So, which is fine, because I knew it was only going to be 5 days. So
there you go.
If it was 2 years, I'm going to come and move in with you, Tristan. So just get ready for that. Get your spare bedroom sorted. I'm going to be there in a couple of years. It's lovely to talk to you. You take care. Thank you so much for calling in. I got loads of messages. Hang on, let me just read a couple before I go into the break. Angie said, "This from me, Petrie. One mum to another. Heck your son moving back if he wanted. Get more puppies for Humphrey to play with, as they're easier to manage. And then tell him your home is full." Thanks, Angie. I think I might do that. I would love more Humphreys. Oh, God, he melts my heart. Gary has said, in the early 90s, I left my job in Jersey to follow a girl to Portugal. It all went wrong, so I had to move penniless back to my foster mother's home. I had to sign on the dole for a few months. I decided that I needed to stand on my own 2 feet and whatever hails, and moved back to Jersey. Yeah, there you go. I'm not sure it's possible to do. Sean said, I'm 32 years old. I had to move back to my parents 3 years ago as I couldn't afford my rent. And let me tell you, it was a nightmare. Never again. I paid them keep and managed to get back on my feet, and now I have my own place. My advice for people would be, do not move back in with your parents unless absolutely necessary. That's from Sean in Liverpool. Even if I thought there was a door open for me, I could no more have lived with my parents than I could have flown to the moon. It was just never going to happen. Quick break. I'll be back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour, and we've been talking about the rise in boomerang kids. A quarter of parents are saying that their children, their adult children, are moving back in with them. And it's the stuff of nightmares for parents. I'm just telling you, it is. Even if they say, oh no, it's lovely. It can't be. It can't be that night. I bet you the second you leave, they go, oh, thank God. But of course, if your child's in trouble, you let them come and stay, come and live with you. And of course, my son would do that. I was going to say would be very welcome. No, he would. I mean, I love him, and I don't know any other mother and son that have as good friendship and relationship as I do with my boy. So, but I think that's because I think that is helped by the fact that we don't live together. I think it helps that we've got a lot to talk about. He's in the same business as me. He's not this side of the camera, he's the other side of the camera, but we're in the same business. We've got a lot to talk about. We know a lot of the same people. We get on really, really well. And that's brilliant. That's fantastic. And I don't think he wants to move in with me either, because I'm a bit of a fusspot. But I'm a control freak. I've said it before, and it's true. But anyway, earlier I was talking to broadcaster and talk editor Phil Dave, and I asked him whether he could ever imagine moving back in with his folks.
strange because I have a couple of times wondered if I was to go back, now that I've had the freedom of my own place with my own rules, could I deal with it? And the short answer is no, I really couldn't.
No.
Because I feel like now that I've had the taste of that lifestyle, it would be very hard to adjust back to a household where there are rules, because it is not my own home. And also, just even as something as simple as sitting in the lounge area and me having total reign over the television.
I know.
It's something as daft as that.
No, it's not.
I don't have to liaise. I don't have to negotiate. I don't have to arrange a time slot that I can maybe watch what I want.
Yeah.
And it's just quite nice.
I just think the dynamic.
Something very selfish, I have to tell you.
Yeah. Oh God, I am. I tell you. But it's just the dynamic that I don't understand. Is that, I mean, you know, for example, my beautiful boy, who you know well, he's a terrific human being. I absolutely love him, and I like him enormously. He is a fantastic boy, and I'm very lucky with him.
I don't know where he gets it from.
I don't know where he gets it from either. He's just wonderful. But anyway, he came to stay with me for a week over Christmas. Right. Because his girlfriend was at her family's and he was working, and we would normally go to our family up in Shropshire, but because he was working, I stayed back with him because I haven't had a Christmas without him, right? Ever. Oh, well, since he was born. I did beforehand, but
thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I just thought I would. But he reverted to son, to child. Now, I always used to say to him when he was growing up, I'm not your friend, I'm your mother, right? So, you know...
You still are.
I know. And that's the thing, that I know in his home, he behaves differently to how he behaves when he's with his mum. So, you know, I would cook... I like to cook, so I would cook. But I know that, you know, in his home, he would then be stacking things in the dishwasher. And if I'd asked him, he would have done. But it's just that, going back to the sunlight, the towel on the floor, you know, and me saying, "Oh, is that going to dry like that?" in a passive-aggressive kind of way, and you know, why are your showers so long? What do you do in there? You know, all of that kind of thing. And will you?
It's because he's not paying the water bill.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm saying. But also with the screen, my shower screen, which I really love, and I'd said to him,
"Your shower screen's nice. It's sort of like a New York apartment."
Yeah, it's lovely. It's really nice. So I said to him, I said, "Can you just wipe that down when you've had a shower?" And he went, "Mum, that's rude."
How is that rude?
How is that rude? And he said, "You don't ask guests to wipe the shower screen." I said, "Yes, you do, actually. And by the way, you're not a guest." So I can spend hours with him. We spend hours a day talking on the phone. We spend a lot of time together. We get on really well. I just don't think that dynamic, I don't know where that would be about doing his own washing or hanging the washing up or all of that. I don't know how we would cope with that.
I can sort of answer that in the sense that for a week, I think it was, a couple of years ago, not long after I actually had bought my place, I did move back home, and that was because my father and the rest of the family had disappeared off on holiday, and my mum wanted to stay at home because she was worried about leaving the then dogs in plural, and sadly we don't have them in the plural anymore. And I, as much as I understand her thinking, because at the time both dogs were quite old, she was very worried about something happening to either of them, and she didn't want to be... It was sort of a case of she didn't want to be away
in case
if something happened.
Yeah, I get that.
And I was going to say, I know that you probably could relate to that sort of thinking as well, but it was bizarre because Monty, who is the dog who still we have, he's 17 in a few months' time, so he's going strong. He's a very healthy dog, all things considered. Well, I say he's healthy. He's a bit of a porker, to be honest, but other than that, he's a good dog. And he's given portion sizes that my mother would give to anyone who enters that household. So I'm not in the least bit surprised that he's mildly obese as a sausage dog, but he's less of a sausage dog, more like a watermelon dog, to be honest.
More like a burger.
Yes, he is. He's more like a burger dog. Anyway, I digress. The point being, is that she refused to go away, and as a result of it, I moved back home to go and make sure that she was okay. I was still going to work during the day, so she's still on her own for a lot of the day, but I have no regrets of doing that. But it was curious because I just thought to myself, simple things that I took so much for granted, living in my own place, such as doing my washing on my terms as and when I want to. It was a case of Mum saying to me, well, what washing have you got? I'll put it on. I said, oh no, don't worry about it, I'll do my... Why, what's wrong with the way I do your washing?
Oh, no.
No. There is nothing wrong with the way you do my washing, but I will do it because A, I am a big boy now, I can do my own washing, and secondly, I don't really want to add to the workload. That was not the idea of me moving in here. So, yeah, I can totally understand.
Yeah, I just think it must be really, really tricky to try and negotiate that. And do you charge them rent? Do you,
So I was never charged rent, but I tell you what it was, because I lived at home until the age of 36.
Yeah.
But that was more of a cultural thing. I'm not being funny, it's really commonplace, you know, so that it's the same with Italian families, Jewish families, it's all about family stick together. And as and when you sort of go off and have your own family, that's the time to move away. Now, obviously, I don't have my own family, but I was quite determined to have my own place eventually. And unfortunately, living in and around London, the earliest I could actually afford to move out was at the age of 36, because a couple of reasons. I was absolutely determined to do it on my own. I had no help. I didn't want any help. You know, for many generations, my family have been buying their own property without help from their parents, and I was quite determined to do the same. But I suppose you could say that the help came in the form of my parents letting me stay at home rent-free
so
until the age of 36.
Yeah.
But the difference was that I did obviously contribute towards shopping and bills and stuff like that.
Yeah. I moved. I sold the house as soon as my son moved out.
I know you did, yeah. You weren't going to run the risk of a return, were you?
No, I wanted to downsize, and I didn't need a 4-bedroom house. So I mean, that was just yeah. But he did go, oh, I see. I've got 2 bedrooms now, so he could still come back.
Yeah, because one of them is an art studio. So
no, that's at the back now. Got the new art studio built at the back.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. It's been a while since I've been invited round.
Yeah, no, it's now a bedroom again. It's now a bedroom that the cat has, so don't get any ideas. Got a message here. That was Phil Dave, by the way. Petrie, my 30-year-old son moved back in with me. It was okay. I didn't mind the company after my fella had died. I'm now in a 1-bed bungalow, so it was a squeeze. He stayed for about 2 months and then went back to his partner. He used to sleep on the couch and just hopped into my bed when I got up. It wasn't ideal, but we managed, and at least I knew he was warm and safe. I would do it again because it's my responsibility. I brought him into the world.